ProWrestlingTees.com/616Entertainment is the home of all official 616 Entertainment merchandise. Pick up a shirt. You'll be glad you did. This video is also brought to you in part by the Patreon producers, without whom content like this would not be possible.
What's up?
There's that boy.
I made it once again.
If it isn't the old Captain McKay.
Yes. Long absent Captain McKay. God, it seems like centuries ago we last got together to discuss a Mortal Kombat film.
Yeah, we definitely didn't review Mortal Kombat 2021, the film, for 2.5 hours just like a month or two ago. That on this very YouTube channel, that definitely didn't happen.
It was big time, man. It was it drew big numbers too, didn't it?
It did big numbers, and I feel like in that moment, there had been the idea of, we should probably do the same for Mortal Kombat Annihilation, and it had been an idea, but after that one went so well, and it drew such big numbers, it was like, oh god damn it, now we have to do it.
On my end, there was no hesitation, because it's not like I was being forced to do something that I wouldn't have been down for anyway. So I'm like, you know what? I can watch Mortal Kombat. It's been a little while since I've seen the first one. Now I watched Annihilation fairly recently when we recorded that, so that that's a pretty regular occurrence for me, at least once a year probably. But this one, I hadn't seen it in probably about 3 years, and since then it had been taken off of a lot of the streaming platforms. So I had to make do with, I had to rent it ultimately on YouTube for like $3 or whatever it was, or not YouTube, but one of those. But yeah, I went out yesterday to actually try and like buy a DVD copy, thinking like, oh, well, the new one just came out. Sure, there'll still be some like special edition of this one, or like a $5 DVD. None to be had anywhere.
Of course. Now because we need it.
Right. Every like FYE I went to, Best Buy, all of it. Plenty of copies of like Mortal Engines as far as the eye could see, whatever that movie is.
I feel like before we get any further, now is probably the perfect time to say, welcome to Mortal Kombat Monday. My name is Ian, and joining me on this review episode of 1995's film Mortal Kombat is the one and only New York king of stop-motion animation, Captain McKay.
Thank you for having me back once again. Always a pleasure, and especially when talking about something near and dear to both of our hearts as Mortal Kombat.
And I want to throw out again, you've heard Captain McKay's name on this channel before. He's been on the reviews before. He's made cameos before. But if you're not subscribed, and these are my words, if you're not subscribed over at youtube.com/CaptainMcKayRandom, watching Superman vs. Thor, watching Batman vs. Terminator, watching the fucking Mortal Kombat Choose Your Destiny video, you gotta lose my number. Those are the rules. Those are my words, not yours.
Strongly recommended, strong praise.
Now, I feel like we have a rapport at this point for going through movies where we kind of go through the whole thing. We talk about all the characters, we go scene by scene, we dissect it all. But for the people who thought maybe I was overly negative on Mortal Kombat 2021, because you were more positive about that movie than I was, but for those who thought...
as I recall, yeah.
Yeah, for those who thought I was overly negative, I still disagree. I don't like it, but I'm going to put this out there. I fucking love this movie. So, if anybody is worried that I'm going to shit on this, fear not. I just watched it again literally 15 minutes ago. I'm in a great mood. I love this movie.
I wonder now, if with the reaction of your like kind of disapproval of a lot of the things in 2021 Mortal Kombat, if by saying you like this one better, that is of course going to welcome the ire of people who are like, the movie sucks. But you know what? Who cares? This movie was fun. I had a good time watching it yesterday. I was sitting there thinking like, you know what? Yeah, they did it. They did a good job with what they were trying to do. And, as we get into like the story and the plot beats and everything, I'm like, this is about all you could do with the material from the first game.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of like it too because it's a little bit of an amalgamation of the first two, because we have Katana, who didn't show up till Mortal Kombat 2. We have Reptile, who was established in 2 because he was basically just like a secret in MK1, and he didn't even have his own moves. He had Scorpion and Sub-Zero's moves. There's a couple guys, and young Shang Tsung. We have a couple guys from MK2 who are here in this movie, and I just think it fucking works. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. You get the blink and you'll miss it Jack's appearance as well, and they make reference to like other things that happen within like MK1/2. They kind of blur the lines a little bit, and you know what? Because I think when this movie came out, 1 and 2 were already out, and 3 was either just out or maybe coming out very shortly after the release of this movie. Because I remember seeing this movie when I was in 5th grade in the theater, and by 6th grade, I had MK2 for Sega. My friend had MK3 on Super Nintendo, so like we were like diving headfirst into it at that point. So like this would have been right around the time that I just became like a fan of this whole universe, I guess.
Yeah, this was Mortal Kombat City. Like, I think you fucking nailed it. I think MK3, the game, and this were coming out like neck and neck, and everybody was already crazy about Mortal Kombat. That's why the movie got made to begin with. So, just like, and we'll just dive into the movie here. The thing opens with someone just screaming Mortal Kombat. And then the badass music plays, and the first thing we get is a scene where Shang Tsung is fighting a guy we've never seen before, who is not going to go on to be the star of the film, believe it or not. What a concept. Shang Tsung is going to kill this dude, and it's just awesome.
It truly is. What a way to start your opening, just establishing the heel right from the get-go.
They establish the heel, and it's like, it's dark and it's moody, and the first thing we see is like this ancient temple, and it's like, okay, what I'm looking at right now, this is decidedly Mortal Kombat. You don't even have to tell me what this is. I can tell you what this is. Even though the guy did scream Mortal Kombat, that's kind of a spoiler.
Wherever that guy is, I hope he's collecting royalties.
Me too.
25 years of this guy screaming Mortal Kombat. That's got to be one of the most like recognizable sound clips, at least of the last 25 years. Certainly, probably, if not the past, like, since the invention of like pop culture. But yeah, as I recall, that came from like the home console release, like the commercial, where it's just people standing in the street yelling Mortal Kombat, and that guy was one of them. And he made a name for himself. It's not a name I know because I have no idea who it is, but it's just he's out there, hopefully.
I feel like this is the perfect opening for the movie, too, because it's got the music, it's got the fight, it's got this dude stomping on another dude's spine. And the little guy, who we learn is Chan, Liu Kang's brother, he stood no chance, but he was like, you know what, I'm gonna fight for what I think is right, I'm gonna stand up for myself, and he gets his spine broken in a million pieces, his soul is stolen. And then Liu Kang wakes up in like a cushy LA apartment that is green for some reason.
Yes. A lot of very, very colorful environments in this movie, to the point where I think somebody just slid the contrast a little far to one side when they were mixing the colors or whatever, and they're just like, fuck it, LA is green, Outworld is blue. Like, we're just doing this. But yeah, getting back to like that first fight, like, I have written here, because I took a pretty good amount of notes for this. I have Shang is very shouty. So, like, his entire fighting style, every time he lands a hit, he's doing like a, oh! And it's fucking great. I love it. It's like in slow motion back fist and him yelling and making that fucking Shang Tsung mad face. So good.
Kari Haruyuki Tagawa is the guy who we have playing Shang Tsung here. And here's the thing, the Dan-Nans might be thinking like, oh, we've already heard you talk about this movie on the history of Mortal Kombat Part 6. That's totally different. That was a scripted, I'm going to go behind the scenes, this is researched. This is myself and Captain McKay just between the boys talking shit about this movie. So totally different environment, because I did not bring up his shouty fighting style. That's a Captain McKay original.
Oh yeah, Shang Tsung, like, I'll come right out and say it at the beginning of this, so anybody is like 10 minutes in already knows. But Shang Tsung is my MVP of this movie, easily. He's so good.
He's so good. I was gonna say I guarantee, but that's not the right word. I agree wholeheartedly that he's the MVP because he's got that shitty heel style, but he's also like extremely charming. So I can definitely believe that people would either fall for what he's saying or they buy what he's selling. Is it's like, I don't know, is this guy really lying to me? Like, he's like when he's talking to Sonya in the beginning, he's just like selling her a dream, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And some of the dialogue he has with Raiden throughout the movie, where he's like just pleading his case about like he knows he was about to do some bullshit, but the way he presents it, you're kind of like, "Fuck, you got me." Okay.
Yeah, I think Raiden's line is like when Scorpion and Sub-Zero are about to pull some shit, and Raiden stops and he's like, "Your sideshow freaks attack my fighters. Your emperor knows this is forbidden." And Shang Tsung is like, "My apologies." It's like, oh, you dickhead. Mm-hmm. So we go from, we see Chan get killed by Shang Tsung. Liu Kang wakes up to a Western Union telegram that just says, "Liu Kang, brother dead, return home." Which, I want to start texting people like that. Like when we were setting up this podcast, I should have been like, Skype, 7 p.m., Mortal Kombat. And then you get on a boat to Hong Kong, and then we record.
Yeah, I'd have to go through like some portal in the sky, and I'd appear somewhere with a microphone.
Or if it was Annihilation, you could get in that hamster ball and travel through the core of the earth.
Yep, fly right and appear on the other side of the world. I like to think now that obviously that movie is its own thing, and like it's, we'll get to that one of these days probably, but like somewhere, like as this movie is going on, there are people on those hamster balls rolling through the center of the earth, and no one knows it.
I didn't even think about the fact that those things have existed for so long.
Yep, that's how people are getting around.
There's a part where, and I'm jumping ahead here because we're all over the place, but there's a part where during Johnny Cage's intro scene, on the set, it's a movie set, someone's just drilling something in the ceiling in the background, and there's like sparks falling down, which I get it. It just looks cool in the background of a movie, but number one, no one would be doing that during a live shoot, and number two, if that's going on above ground, what does the digging of those tunnels look like underground?
All the unanswered questions.
Tell me about Sonya looking for Kano here.
Well, I have Kano gets the Two-Face reveal. So if you've seen Batman Forever, you know you basically focus on the clean side of his face, and then he dramatically pauses to turn to show you his deformity. And it was the same thing in Batman Forever with Two-Face. But then Sonya appears at what appears to be like a nightclub with a concert going on, and Shang Tsung is with Kano, insisting that she needs to be at this tournament on this boat. He needs her. She's a part of his grand plan, basically. So Kano is basically the bait, and she's going for it because she hates Kano because Kano has killed her partner. So you get all the backstory right away in that first scene, so you're like, okay, I get it. She doesn't like him, and here's why. What you also get is open gunfire where people just continue the concert, and like there seems to be no consequence for any of it. And yeah.
That kind of made me think the gunfire and no consequence, like maybe they thought it was part of the show, because when you hear the term nightclub, you might be thinking of like club music or house music, but this is some, I don't know what, it could be a real band, but it's like this fucking super fast rock that's like, I don't know what the fuck they're saying. That sounded like scat, but it wasn't scat music.
This is, we're thinking with 2021 brains, but in the 90s, like, this has got to be like some industrial metal, like club underground where maybe, I don't know how common, assault weapons were in fighting, Black Dragon guys in there. But hey, maybe like if this is really an underground thing, maybe that's common. People don't bat an eyelid at the fact that there's like, oh yeah, they just don't like each other. They're shooting.
My dad told me a story a long time ago that he was at an Alice Cooper concert decades and decades ago, and the finale of the concert was like they finished the last song and the lights went out, and when the lights came on, Alice Cooper was hanging by his neck from a noose on the stage. And no one was sure if it was real or if it was part of the show, but everyone they left anyway. Because it's like, it's Alice Cooper, he's fucked up, I don't know. But that's what the gunfire made me think of. It's like, it's probably just part of the show, I don't know.
As a brief aside, a couple of years ago, I was at an Alice Cooper concert.
Nice.
He didn't hang himself, but he did electrocute himself, and he was institutionalized, and he turned into a Frankenstein. There was a lot going on. He was having a rough night.
Did he feed his Frankenstein, or did someone feed it for him?
Oh, that was the transition. The Frankenstein came out and started singing along with the song, too, so it was even better.
So wait, he and the Frankenstein were then separated into their own beings?
Well, no, I think he went away and the Frankenstein came back to finish the song. If I remember, it was a couple of years ago, but I mean, it was fucking awesome either way.
I need to go to an Alice Cooper concert, I think.
Oh, it's worth it.
We got Kano here, played by Trevor Goddard, who is unfortunately no longer with us. But, dude, Trevor Goddard is what, in my opinion, two things made the legacy of Kano. Number one, the fucked up steel eye, red eye face. And number two, he's Australian. And he wasn't until Trevor Goddard played him in this movie and gave him that accent, because we never heard him speak in Mortal Kombat 1, 2, or 3. And then in the movie he has this accent. He has had that accent for the rest of time now. Everyone is just like, oh yeah, Kano, he's Australian.
That's it. Like, this, it's interesting when, like, outside the official canon, like, bleeds into the official canon. So, like, Kano has just become that guy now in pretty much everything. And, like, honestly, it really works. It gives him, because I'm not sure, like, what his character would have been without this portrayal. Like, would he have just been some mercenary that really doesn't get, like, too much of a personality or anything? Like, you don't get much from the games. But when you see this guy in the movie, like, doing his, like, oh, bye, eating his fucking turkey leg and all that shit, I'm like, all right, yeah, this guy, I'm drawn to him for being just, like, as, like, disgraceful as he is as a human being, and just, like, as vile as he is. He's charismatic. And
everybody, and I think this is across the board, everybody loved Kano in Mortal Kombat 2021, and he was, this character just turned up a little. He was even more quippy and even funnier, but I think it all comes back to Trevor Goddard and probably Kevin Droney, who wrote this script, who was probably like, you know what? We need somebody for comic relief on the bad guy side, because I can't have Johnny Cage being funny in every scene. So fuck it, now Kano's funny too.
Because, like, if it's not Kano, then you're basically left with Sub-Zero, and that would make no sense.
Sub-Zero's like, hello, baby. Did you miss me?
Yeah, he's just hitting one-liners and everything. Could have been a wildly different movie.
Could have been Mortal Kombat Annihilation, where he flies through the fucking sky somehow.
Yep.
I liked how you set the scene of the Sonya entrance. Tell me about this introduction we get for Johnny Cage.
Well, this is Johnny Cage basically making a dramatic entrance into, like, a abandoned warehouse, it looks like, and he's getting attacked by several well-dressed gentlemen with different martial arts weapons. And then it's revealed in the end, like, when the one guy doesn't go down after Cage hits him, it's actually, we've been swerved, it's a movie scene. And Cage gets frustrated with the guy, and he said, this is the part where you fall down. And then the guy just does a back bump. and they cut the scene, and Johnny starts, like, having the argument with an obvious Steven Spielberg stand-in. And that's how we get his whole character arc right there. He's the Hollywood star who's frustrated. He's been given, like, just not what he wants to be doing, like these movies where turns out all of his critics are, like, questioning his actual martial arts ability, and nobody believes him. Everyone says he's a phony and all this other stuff.
I liked that you pointed out earlier about Sonya. Like, we're getting a lot of, and Kano and Shang Tsung, like, we're getting a lot of story detail here. Like, here's who this is, that's their background. Here's who this is, that's their story. Here's who this is, there's their motivation. And then Johnny Cage shows up, same shit. He's an actor, shit's fucked up, and everyone thinks he's a phony. And we get that same thing here, and the pacing of this movie is so much all at once, But we know, like, this movie was made for fans of the game. We know who these characters are. So just get it out of the way. Say it as quickly as possible and let's get into the meat. And that's one of the things I love about this movie. We didn't need 25 minutes to discuss who Johnny Cage is. We get it. Let's fucking go.
Even better, like, that this being kind of like the first exposure that a lot of people would have had as far as like an origin story. Because in the game, you just select your character and you start your first fight. You don't know anything about these guys until you get to their endings or read some of the, like, the supplemental, like, comic book that would have come out with it or something like that. But, like, this is a good enough 5-minute or less introduction to each character, sometimes several characters in one scene, where you get it. By the time all these characters come together, you know why they're all there, you know what they're all doing, and it works.
It works perfectly, and I think another thing that works perfectly is we transition from... we should mention that it's like a martial arts master that Johnny really respects is on set, and he's the one who introduces Johnny to the tournament, saying, this is where you can go to legitimize yourself, and no one can dispute it. And then as that guy's walking away, he transforms back into Shang Tsung, which, here's what I always question. Shang Tsung can transform into people whose souls he has taken. So are we under the impression that he sought out this martial arts master that Johnny respects and killed him, took his soul for the sake of setting up this spot?
I wouldn't have had an answer for you up until last year.
Oh, shit.
When Mortal Kombat 11 had those intro dialogues and Shang Tsung makes mention of stealing Master Boyd's soul in a Johnny Cage intro.
Fuck, I haven't heard that one, so you just taught me that right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, all those intro dialogues are, like, winking a nod to, like, different canon and different things. But it's the same guy playing Shang Tsung. It's Master Boyd, who has never appeared in anything ever, as far as I know. So I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, it's canon now. I'll take it.
You know what? That is great, and we're going to get to a character named Art Lean later, speaking of people who showed up once and have never been heard from again. Where is the Art Lean? Here's what I want. A sequel, spiritual successor to Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks featuring Art Lean and Master Boyd.
Finally shine a spotlight on Art Lean. He deserves it.
What would you call that game?
Oh, God. Mortal Kombat Lean Back or something. It would be stupid. Whatever I would call it would be dumb. Somebody else has to name it.
Yeah, I had you go first because I didn't have anything ready, and even now I didn't come up with anything good enough. So. But we go from the reveal that Shang Tsung just basically entrapped Johnny Cage into showing up to the tournament, to Liu Kang getting off the boat. He's out of L.A. Now he's back in, what is it, Hong Kong, I think? Or China?
I believe so, yeah.
He's somewhere. He's going home, basically, where he came from, because he has to meet with his grandfather and yada, yada, yada. Here's the deal. He gets off this boat, and all he's doing is walking toward the temple. And this fucking music has no business being this good. It's just Liu Kang walking, and this shit's like bum bum ba-dum ba-bum bum. Like, fuck, man. This whole soundtrack is out of control. And I think every scene has great music, and every time a new character walks in, like later on, Scorpion and Sub-Zero, the door opens, and it's just these fucking guitars and these drums, and it's like, wow, everyone basically has entrance music. Because someone walks in, and then this fucking riff starts going. This whole soundtrack is out of control, and I just want to put that out there right now.
I didn't take a particular note of the music in this scene, but I know, like, later on in, like, fight scenes and stuff, when you got those kind of, like different tom drums and tribal drums going, and you got, like, French horns blasting, and I'm like, oh, it's getting intense now. Like, they did a good job.
I was talking to my buddy Stevie Fierce, former freelance wrestling world champion, and he was telling me that one of the songs that he listens to when he works out is the song that plays during the Liu Kang versus Reptile fight, and I was like, you have no idea how happy that makes me.
Dude, it's so good.
So we get Liu Kang. He shows back up at the temple. And he's talking to his grandfather about how did Chan die, what happened, and we learn that the grandfather and all these monks and Chan, they all believed in the legend. and they believed in Mortal Kombat and that they were going to have to fight to defend the Earth against these outworld threats. Liu Kang left because he thought it was all bullshit. He couldn't handle it. He wanted to live a normal life. So then, Raiden shows up. The fucking God of Thunder, the Lightning Man, Mr. Lightning Boy. Liu Kang doesn't believe he's real. And then Raiden throws him on his ass and his eyes light up and Liu Kang's kind of like, alright, well, fuck.
Some interesting things about this scene, like when Liu Kang is talking with his grandfather, they're like in the same place that Liu had that dream about where Shang Tsung was killing his brother, like that temple or whatever in the background. So I was just like, I wonder, like, when did this fight happen? And why did Shang Tsung just come and kill his brother seemingly unprovoked? Like, I don't know.
I may have an answer for that.
Oh, okay.
And there's no Mortal Kombat 11 retcon intro to explain it, but
okay.
I think it's because, and I swear I'm not going to do this the whole time, I'm not going to compare this to the 2021 movie and say why this is better, but one of my complaints for the 2021 movie was that Shang Tsung was an idiot. He didn't seem organized. When things went wrong, he did nothing to regroup. He just kept sending his best people in to die, and then he would just send in more. Where this Shang Tsung, he has basically contracted Kano to get Sonya where he needs her to be. He took the soul of Master Boyd to get Johnny Cage where he needs him to be. He killed Liu Kang to get him there. This Shang Tsung has a master plan. Because we see from the beginning, like, oh, why does he want Sonya there? Oh, why did he let Kano die? It's because at the end, we're skipping to the end now, at the end, his whole plan was to challenge Sonya. Sonya declines, and then he would win by forfeit. The whole thing, he had it gimmicked and worked from the very beginning. So I think he knew from just how things were laid out and that Liu Kang is the descendant of Kung Lao, like, I need Liu Kang to be there, but I can outsmart them by using Sonya.
That makes sense.
That's
and also,
how I
he
took it.
He probably thinks like Liu Kang going in there for revenge is going to like cloud his true potential, and like he won't be fighting for the right reasons, and therefore will probably lose, like Raiden tells him.
That and I had this in the notes, and we'll get there again later, but Liu Kang probably would have been killed a couple times if things didn't go perfectly. And it wasn't just luck. Like, Katana basically told Liu how to beat Sub-Zero. Like, the element that brings life thing. If she didn't tell him that, Liu would have fucking died. Because he would have been overly aggressive, and he would have got. So this Liu Kang isn't just this guy who's going to kick everyone's ass. Raiden tells him in the beginning, oh, you're not ready. Like, we got a lot of work to do.
I do have in my little notes for this section that Liu is conflicted for like 60 seconds, and they're like telling him how lucky he is to be given the dream, and Liu is just like, the dream to like fight big monsters? That does not sound like the kind of dream he probably wants. But then in his conversation with Raiden, where Raiden is, he brought his Christian Bale Dark Knight Batman voice to this meeting.
He certainly did.
But yeah, he's like, Liu Kang is like, why did you let Chan die? Why didn't you protect him? And Raiden's like, why didn't you? But Liu Kang's like, dude, I was in L.A. Like, what am I going to do?
And I think that's one of Raiden's things is, like, you've run from your destiny more than once now. Like,
yeah.
Why didn't you protect him? You were supposed to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And you left. And I love when Raiden first shows up and Liu Kang is just like, this guy's just a bum. He calls him, like, a simple beggar. But, like, he's basically saying, like, this guy's just a hobo. And you guys believe what he says. And his grandfather's like, Lord Raiden, his mind has been rotted. Too much television. I love... How do we feel, before we move on, how do we feel about Christopher Lambert as Raiden?
In a lesser way than Kano, but in still a pretty impactful way. That, like, defined the Raiden character pretty much from that point on. Like, as kind of, like, the guide and the guardian character of the Earth Warriors. Because I remember in the original games, like, he was just there to kill people. That Raiden, he would not suffer fools lightly. And I think in his ending, he, like, blows up the world or something. So he's not your nice guy. So
yeah,
go ahead. This, like, kind of became his his role in the franchise, I guess, is pretty much him there to just, I don't know, just put over the baby faces pretty much.
Yeah, he took on, like, the coach role. He was, like, the leader.
Yes, exactly.
And there are people who, and I covered this in the history of Mortal Kombat Part 6, too, where people were kind of questioning the casting of Christopher Lambert as Raiden, and even, like, why wasn't he Asian? And even Ed Boon was like, you know, we never really did establish what he looks like. Like, his hat always covers his face, so who knows what Raiden looks like? And then Ed Boon's other quote was like, I mean, we certainly didn't picture the Highlander guy, but I have to say, I love Christopher Lambert here. I think he's great, and if it was somebody else, maybe they would have done a great job too, but this is what we got, and as a kid and now as an adult, I love him. I think, like, he's funny when he needs to be funny, which is something I didn't know that I wanted from Raiden. He's badass when he needs to be badass. He's just dope. I love Christopher Lambert as Raiden.
I'm with you. I agree. I think he's well used in the part that he needs to play. He doesn't need to get super physical in this movie, but the combat that he does do, it's like the message is sent. Like Liu Kang getting flipped easily, and then Raiden's like, "Oh, I thought I was just a simple beggar," or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, just that's all you need from that guy. And he occasionally has a lightning flash, and yeah, I think it's good. As far as like who played him, like whether he was Asian or not, like Ed Boon. Well, you know, you said it's like he never really established whether like what his ethnicity would be, mm-hmm. and you got freaking Daniel Pesina playing Chinese ninjas in the video game. So like,
true.
You didn't really start with a visual aid.
I like, for me, I don't give a shit at all. Like, whether he's white, Asian, Black Raiden, I don't give a fuck. As long as he's badass, that's what Raiden needs to be, you know? I think of when we get to this next scene, we're at the docks, and everybody's ready now. We've been introduced, everybody's ready to get on this boat, and this is where we meet the legend, Art Lean.
I have underlined your boy, Art Lean.
Tell me about Art Lean. Tell me about this scene.
So basically, I think Johnny Cage walks up to him because he sees him reading a newspaper, a dirt sheet, brother, and it's all about how Johnny Cage is like a phony again, and this guy who's reading the paper is like, nah, man, I don't believe this. Like, I know you're a good fighter. You can't fake these moves. Like, I know what I'm talking about. And Johnny Cage recognizes him, and we get basically a line of dialogue that's like, oh yeah, I saw you fight once. You're Art Lean. You're awesome. And that's what we get. So in this movie, where I just moments ago said that all you need is a little bit of development for these main characters, and it works, it kind of falls a little flat on this guy because this guy doesn't have the benefit of being in any of the games.
Yeah. So
you already know something's up. Even me in 5th grade watching this in the theater, I'm like, I don't know that guy. He doesn't matter.
You have a point there. And, like, you know what's funny is, like, it does fall a little flat because we don't have all of the imagination from the game, like you said. But as time goes on, the few seconds that we see him before he meets his unfortunate demise, I was rooting for him.
Oh, yeah. He's a likable guy. He's just like, oh, cool, sweet, a tournament. I'll go, I'll fight. Probably, you know, do okay. If I win, if I lose, what's the worst that could happen? Said Art Lean, probably. Cut
to Goro raising him above his head. But we'll get to that later. In this very scene, we get Johnny Cage and Liu Kang meeting for the first time. And Johnny Cage thinks that Liu Kang is just some dude walking around on the docks. So he offers him money to put his bags, like, on the ship. Because Johnny Cage is a big-time movie star. He's not carrying his own luggage. He's got people for that. Mm-hmm. So he decided Liu Kang is his people. So Liu Kang takes the money, picks up Johnny's luggage, throws it in the fucking ocean. And we get the great Johnny Cage line of, thank God I didn't tell him to park the car.
It was good.
The quips are good.
Cage is well done in this movie.
We also get, like you said earlier, the games kind of like future installments in the franchise took major influence from this as far as like Kano goes. But they also did that with Johnny Cage and Sonya, because they had no connection, let alone a romantic connection, until this movie came out. And the first time we see Johnny Cage and Sonya, he's like hitting on her instantly. And she has none of it, puts a gun under his chin, and goes, "Where's Kano?" And Johnny Cage, ever the smooth operator, goes, "I don't know who that is, but I bet I can help you find him."
Yep. Good old Johnny, he's trying.
How do I keep myself connected to her for as long as possible?
You're absolutely right, though. Thinking of MK9 when they rebooted, and then the animated Scorpion's Revenge when they basically told the intro again. It's every single one is Johnny Cage perving on Sonya and her being irritated with it at first, but eventually maybe warming up to him a little bit. Like, that's all right out of this. Like, this movie established, you know, people talk about lore in Mortal Kombat, whether it matters or not, and like what is and is not canon, and like it's, you know, you can take it or leave it for, I think, the most part. Some people are super into it, but a lot of it does come from this movie, and it just bled into the games.
I think one of the takeaways from that too is like, video games have obviously evolved to the point that now we have stories like The Last of Us Part 2, which is written a lot like a movie, like with these deep characters and these emotional scenes. But like back in the day, Mortal Kombat's just a fighting game. And then I think when you turn it into a movie, the guy who wrote this movie, Kevin Droney, basically, I imagine him taking all the characters and looking at them like puzzle pieces. And it's like, okay, I have my pieces in Liu Kang, Johnny Cage, Sonya. How do I make the picture of this puzzle? Like, how do these fit together? So he was probably like, okay, Raiden, how does he connect? He's the coach. Johnny Cage, Sonya, okay, romantic interest. Like, he had to figure out how all of these things came together, and I think he fucking nailed it. And obviously so did Ed Boon, because they stole a whole bunch of this shit. Kevin Droney is a legend in Mortal Kombat, and I hope people recognize that.
I remember hearing on a podcast or something a while ago about, it was like a wrestling podcast, and they were talking about WWE after Vince Russo left in like 99.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a writer come in who kind of, I don't even remember the guy's name at this point, but he kind of is like the unsung hero of that era in wrestling, because he basically would like have like, I don't know, you call it like a pegboard in the back with like characters and who they did and did not like, and who their enemies were and who their allies were. And it's like, that seems like what probably happened here. It's like you got pictures on a board. It's like, okay, you got the good guys over here. This one hates Kano. This one hates Shang Tsung. You know, you got Scorpion and Sub-Zero. They don't like each other, but we can't do much with that in this movie. So they're going to just be like slaves, I guess. Fine. But like, he kind of like mapped out how they were going to interact with each other, and then just was like, okay, cool, now I can start writing.
I love that. I've never heard that before, but I can definitely see not only how that would work, like make things so much easier, but shouldn't everybody be doing that when they try to write shit?
Yeah. I mean, just continuity-wise, like wrestling, I mean, especially is notorious for that. It's just like, wait, weren't these guys beating each other up last week and now they're on the same team? That doesn't make any sense. And like, that kind of stuff this guy thought of, and he's like, yeah, why would they ever be on a team together? Or why would they not at least acknowledge, if they're on a team, that they don't like each other because of, you know, last month when they were beating each other up or whatever?
It's so funny because you mentioned Vince Russo there, and I'm already picturing so many times that happened under his watch or on his watch in the WWF, and in, like, I remember in WCW they did this whole total sidebar here. They did this whole like angle, I think it was like Fall Brawl 99 or Fall Brawl 2000, like Hogan was back in the red and yellow, and it was him versus Sting for the world title in the main event. And the whole angle was, can these two have an up and up match to determine a real champion? Or is Hogan gonna go back to being this piece of shit, like jerk heel that he's been for so long? Can we trust him? And then in the main event, Sting cheated, hits Hogan over the head with the bat and wins. and everyone loved it because they were like, yeah, fuck Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
So, like, a week and a half later, they just totally dropped the whole thing. Classic Vince Russo. It didn't work, and they were like, whatever.
Just move forward.
So we're on the ship here.
Yep.
And basically, Sonya's looking for Kano, and she goes down into what would, in Mortal Kombat Deception, would be a stage called the nethership interior. But we're inside the ship, and we got these cool-ass chains hanging from the ceiling. The lighting is, like, super dark and black and blue. And she runs into Shang Tsung down there, who's trying to charm her, and just, she's not having it. She's walking around, gun drawn, pointing it at everything. Johnny Cage and Liu Kang show up. And then Scorpion and Sub-Zero show up. Walk me through this whole ordeal.
So, yeah, you got the three baby faces staring down Shang Tsung. Suddenly the guitar starts blasting, and you got Sub-Zero and Scorpion walking out. And Shang Tsung has his line about they're the deadliest of enemies, but slaves under my power, or whatever he says. And Sub-Zero breaks Sonya's gun by freezing it and just snapping it in half. Scorpion gets out his little, like, monster thing from his hand that growls at Johnny Cage. And basically Raiden comes in and just, like, puts them both against the wall and just, like, electrocutes them for a second, and then starts yelling at Shang Tsung about what we were talking about earlier, where he's just like, you guys, your sideshow freaks attacked my warriors. And you get another good little burial from Shang Tsung where he's just like, sorry, Raiden, it won't happen again, and but we're eventually going to be at the island where you have no dominion. And he's just like, my dominions are well known to me, sorcerer, or whatever he says.
Such a good line.
Yeah.
It's funny about the Sub-Zero, the spot where he freezes Sonya's pistol, and he, like, breaks the tip off of it, basically rendering her gun useless. Which, I mean, she's a hand-to-hand fighter, as we'll come to know, but obviously she feels more comfortable with her goddamn gun. She's a special forces agent.
Right, she was putting it to good use at that nightclub a few days ago. So.
Yeah. When I just mentioned in the History of Halloween Part 1 that I had Halloween 2 on VHS back in the day. And there's a part in that movie where a little kid has a razor blade stuck in his mouth, and his mom takes him to the hospital. And it was a play on the old tales of crazy people sliding, like, needles and razor blades into Halloween candy for unsuspecting kids. And I mentioned that I had the VHS tape because it was all fuzzy, and to me it looked like a big piece of glass. I could not make out that it was a razor blade.
Mm-hmm.
I also had Mortal Kombat on VHS when I was a kid. And to me, this part where Sub-Zero freezes and breaks the gun, being that it was standard definition and on a fuzzy-ass tape, to me it looked like he just froze the tip of the gun and then took the ice off, as if to say, I can do that whenever I want. I couldn't tell that he broke the gun. And I just felt the need to tell that story here.
These were the limitations we had of VHS, especially viewed, like, oh god, some of the VHS tapes I had were viewed so often that, like, they basically would, like, the integrity of the video would just deteriorate over time.
Oh yeah, my Nightmare Before Christmas tape, the part where Jack is walking down the hill that, like, uncurls as he's singing and walking down it. It would jump because that was my favorite part, and I would constantly rewind it to watch the hill uncurl. So I ruined that part of the tape. I love this scene because then we go back out onto the deck of the ship, and Raiden is basically explaining now, we know who all of you are, here's what you're going to need to do. You're fighting for the fate of the world, blah blah blah. I just love this scene because if you really look at it, especially now in HD, I was watching it on Blu-ray, there's no water around the ship. It's clearly just fog from a fog machine being blown into the shot. And the starry night sky in the background, look closely, you can see the wrinkles in the curtain. Like,
oh, wow.
But it's so charming. I love it. Because nowadays this would be CGI. There would be, like, CGI water splashing up onto the deck of the ship. We don't need all that. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. I mean, either that or it would be 2021 Mortal Kombat where it's like somebody's backyard.
They're in a trailer park or like a VFW hall.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to go up against Goro and Shang Tsung. B39. Because they're in a bingo hall. Oh, goodness.
Something I wanted to actually go back a second to
Yeah,
the
go
scene
ahead.
where, like, okay, so in that scene prior, we get that one line from Shang Tsung regarding Scorpion and Sub-Zero. And here's kind of one issue that if anybody has issues with this movie, it's that Scorpion and Sub-Zero are pretty much completely pushed aside. Now, this is as you said, this movie moves at a very blinding pace. Like, let's say you're booking it. What do you do with Scorpion and Sub-Zero? Like, how do you fit their B plot into this movie where these guys don't like each other and maybe they have different reasons for being here? Like, if you had to insert their story in here somewhere, how would you do it?
Fuck. All right. I before I go into like trying to do it, I will say I kind of think this movie did it perfectly by not doing that, because every other iteration we've ever had of Mortal Kombat, that is such a focus, and it's basically like the pearls falling in the Gotham alleyway. We have seen it 25 times. We get it. Where this movie kind of just like, to me it felt like, yeah, Scorpion and Sub-Zero here, they're kind of in the background and they do both get killed, but it's Mortal Kombat, no one's really dead. So you would think that the idea was, you know what, we'll flesh them out more in the second movie, which I would have been totally okay with. And obviously, they're both in Annihilation, so...
That's true. Like, your statement about nobody staying dead, totally accurate. I mean, Sub-Zero in Annihilation, you get the line where it's like, oh, that was my brother. But, okay, cool. Scorpion, you get no explanation. He's just back. Like...
And... even though it wasn't even a thing yet, Noob Saibot is also in Annihilation. He comes out of the chest of Ermac, but...
Also true, yeah.
Ed Boon didn't even know who Noob Saibot was yet, because Annihilation came out in, 97?
Yeah.
Noob Saibot was not revealed to be Bi-Han until Deception, which was 2005? 2004?
It was around there, because I remember playing that in college, and that would have been when I was away at school, yeah.
It's a long time, so... But they were all there, so... But if I had to fit it in, shit. You know what? For me, it might have been something even as quick as Shang Tsung explaining, like, maybe Kano in that nightclub or somewhere else. Maybe we see Shang Tsung and Kano talking, and this is where Shang Tsung makes the pitch to Kano. Hey, I'm going to need you to get this girl, Sonya Blade, to my tournament. Here's how. Maybe Kano questions like, well, who are you anyway? And Shang Tsung explains, and maybe we see a flashback of how he captured the souls of like two of the greatest warriors ever, and Kano's like, yeah, right. And then he just summons them, and here they are, to prove it.
Okay.
I could go that route, I guess. I wouldn't want to take too much time because, like, this movie's got to be, 90 minutes, 100 minutes tops, and I think it's perfect. I would hate for this movie to wind up being 2 hours plus, you know, because it doesn't need to be. How about you? What do you think?
The best thing I could come up with was basically similar to what we saw happen with the good guy characters. Maybe a similar scene happens with the bad guys where, like, Shang Tsung approaches Scorpion and he's just like, you know, how'd you like the chance to redeem your family and get what you want or something, just be on this boat, and, like, the man who killed your family will be there. And that at least sets up Scorpion and Sub-Zero dislike each other. Now, again, you would have to find scenes for them in the movie to, like, explore that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this movie, the way it plays out, they never fight each other. They never even have any issue with each other that you would be made aware of. But that really was the best I got. Again, I think, like what you said before, I think they did a good enough job with it by just kind of pushing it aside and being like, yeah, we know, we'll say a line where they're enemies, but they're not going to be enemies today. Like, that's I think that fit the movie and it helped it move along. And we've gotten plenty of other Scorpion focused movies and like different things that now, with the animated one and the one that just came out a couple months ago, like that's a very pivotal thing that drives the whole course of the movie. So I don't think we needed it in 95.
I think I like yours better.
Okay.
I can just maybe, how like there's a part later where all these bad guys are closing in on Sonya, Johnny Cage, and Liu Kang, and Raiden just goes, and he like flashes the lightning. Mm-hmm. I can see maybe like Sub-Zero walking away down a hallway, and as he turns his back, like the gimmick comes out of Scorpion's hand, and maybe Shang Tsung is like, not yet, we're not done yet. Like, you'll have your chance once my plan is complete, but until then. So, like, to keep planting that seed, like, Scorpion's only here because he knew Sub-Zero was going to be here. And I think that works for your plan, where for mine it was just still introducing them as, like, the mind-controlled slaves. I like that. But you know what? Let's remake the movie.
All right. Let's call these guys up.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? You did mention wrestling and, like, the Vince Russo era earlier. I didn't mention this in my history of video about the movies, but Sub-Zero here is played by Francois Petit, who was a doctor in the WWF back in the 90s.
Oh, really?
He was like a chiropractor sort of weirdo guy, and Bruce Pritchard on Something to Wrestle seems to think that Francois Petit was like full of shit and like not a real doctor, but I don't know.
Okay.
Bruce Pritchard's kind of a weirdo anyway, so.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Now, we're going to go from the ship to Shang Tsung's island.
Oh, yeah, and also, I had one more thing about that scene where Raiden says, "Come with me," and then teleports away. I'm like, would you not lead them?
There's the great line, too, when they're back above the deck. Or they're on the deck. And Johnny Cage is just like, we got a guy freezing things. We got a guy with living things coming out of his hands. We're following a guy around who, from what I can tell, is made of electricity. I feel like... I was going to say, I feel like they nailed all the characters, but again, because the games didn't let anybody speak, this established the characters. This is where we learned who they are.
Yeah, basically.
How about this Shang Tsung Island?
Oh, when they're first pulling up, you just get kind of like... Well, I mean, you get the famous "It Has Begun" scene.
I totally glossed over that.
Yeah, they're on their way to the island, and suddenly, like, there's weird, like, lightning and a storm formation that looks like a skull starts showing up. You get a little Shao Kahn helmet. You get Shang Tsung screaming "It has begun," which is up there with the guy yelling Mortal Kombat as, like, one of the most recognizable franchise sound clips.
Agreed.
And, next thing you know, you see him on Shang Tsung's island. They're all getting kind of ferried over on, like, little, like, canoes, and Sonya's equipment doesn't work, and her compass is going crazy, and so they're definitely... Yeah, there's no hope of them being found by anybody.
She's looking real good in a pair of black jeans and a black turtleneck.
Oh, always, yeah. She has to be so hot. Dude. And I don't mean physically, I mean, like, literally, she's got to be sweating. That looks very uncomfortable.
Both. I just, to paint the picture of the island, like, they literally did, I don't remember what the location was anymore, but they were on an island with, like, natural mountains and fucking sand and palm trees obviously surrounded by water, because it's an island. But when we get the interiors of some of these places with these statues of these fucking monster things and, like, what have to be unexplained, like, ancient warriors... when I picture, like, Mortal Kombat settings in my head, they look like this. So, the set designers on this project, I gotta give them a chef's kiss, because it just looks fucking perfect. And not even just comparing it to the trailer park of Mortal Kombat 2021, but, like, even Annihilation, they tried, but a lot of it kind of looks like shit. Where most of the sets in this movie, which I have more notes about the sets later, but, like, they all look so cool. To, like, the point where I'm not even thinking about, like, what kind of fights you could set up here. I'm thinking about like, oh, what is that thing? Who's that statue of? I don't know who that guy is. What's his story? Like, there's just, the whole thing is, every frame is just oozing with, hey, what's that? Which to me is super cool.
Yeah, and very fitting with Mortal Kombat, especially in those days where you got all that in the games too, and they didn't tell you anything.
They didn't tell you shit.
Like, they're not acknowledging their own continuity yet because they barely have any continuity. They're on game number like 2 or 3 at this point, so it's like, there's some weird statue of a guy. I read like this movie some time ago. Me and Burnout Inc., friend of the show, were talking about this movie and Street Fighter. And I think Street Fighter had like a $30 million budget, and Mortal Kombat was like significantly less, probably like $20 million. But it looks so much better than Street Fighter. And I know Street Fighter, it probably went to Van Damme, probably went right up Van Damme's nose. But this, like the way they did these sets and everything, like they made great use of what they had. And like, I don't know, it wasn't just like thrown on the screen. It looked like they actually cared about what they were doing. And it really, I mean, obviously there's technological things that we can talk about that aren't great, but it worked for the time, and I think much of it still does.
I think it worked for the time. I think it still does. And we get to the taste of things to come scene, where everybody who's going to be participating in this tournament, and this is what's really cool, is there's got to be 50 or 60 people in this, like, I don't want it, like a dining room, I guess. I almost said cafeteria.
Huge, yeah, like huge, like dining hall.
Yeah, and it's like tables and tables of all of this, like fruit, vegetables, and like turkey and meat and fucking glasses of wine, candles. It's gorgeous. I don't think anybody gets to eat a bite of it when Shang Tsung shows up and says, now it's time for a taste of things to come. And all of these red-hooded dudes from his goon squad ruin all the food. They flip all the tables, and here comes Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Now, I've always kind of questioned this scene in the sense that the taste of things to come happens where it's Sub-Zero he has a showdown with one of the goons. And the goon is flexing, and he's throwing kicks, and he's warming up. He throws this flying kick, Sub-Zero freezes him, the guy shatters into a million pieces. His head rolls up to Shang Tsung, and Shang Tsung says, flawless victory. Now, we can see that Sub-Zero walked in with Scorpion, and we can see Scorpion in the background in several instances. Do you think we were also supposed to get a demonstration from Scorpion as well? Because he doesn't do anything.
That's true. Yeah, I never actually thought about that. Like, I'll be honest, like, in as many times I've seen this movie over the years, I never noticed Scorpion until just watching this yesterday.
Yeah, he's
standing there. Oh, he's on the other side with the other guys, and instead of him going down, it's just, like, that guy who starts, like, showing off some of the moves and, like, doing the kicks and everything. I'm like, I wonder if Scorpion was supposed to kind of do something. Now that you bring that up, that's interesting.
I kind of talked myself out of it, because what I was thinking of was, you know what, maybe not. Because Sub-Zero's fight with Liu Kang, and we'll get there, sucks, and it's really short, and he gets killed. Scorpion's fight with Johnny Cage is long, and he gets a ton of shit in. Yes. So maybe they let Sub-Zero show off his shit here because he wasn't going to be able to later? Maybe that's what it was? I don't know. But I figured it was...
that may very well be the case.
Yeah. And you made the great point earlier of Shang Tsung's growly fighting style, where everything is like, hooah! This guy, this goon that's fighting Sub-Zero makes the funniest fucking noises. He's throwing kicks like, hua! Huay! So! I'm like, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
Like, there's warming up, and then I think, like, I don't know, the whole time, maybe this is just me, but the whole time I'm watching this guy do that, I'm like, you're a little too far away. Like, you wouldn't have got blown up if you were just a little closer and you could actually hit him. But actually, in the scene leading up to this, before I forget, you get the introduction of Kitana, who makes eyes with Liu Kang, like they make eye contact, and Johnny Cage says something like, yeah, when a girl looks at you like that, it means something. And then, first of all, I wanted to make note of her giant orange umbrella. Not a sun in sight, but she's under it.
Yeah, she's indoors.
Yeah, yep. And then Shang Tsung says to Reptile, like, keep an eye on her. And then we see Reptile kind of appear, like he had been there as a statue the whole time. In, it's 90s CG, and I can't even give it a pass at the time. It wasn't great.
No, it wasn't.
Today, it's like, God, what are you guys doing? You've got so much right, but Reptile is one of the things that I can look at and be like, nah, it just didn't really work. But yeah, it's an establishing point now at this point that, Katana, she's onto something. Liu Kang is like, all right, who's this lady with this umbrella? What's going on? Hey. And, Reptile's going to kind of be keeping an eye on things. So we've got that little plot established for, payoff later on.
You made a great point there that I never really thought about, that Reptile, we don't see him because he's cloaked. He's got his, invisibility on. And I hope everybody has seen this movie, but if you haven't, he's not running around as humanoid Reptile who's looking like Scorpion and Sub-Zero. He's a goddamn bipedal lizard. And he's very brightly colored. So he's got the invisibility on, but when he moves, it's a lot like Predator. So you can see through him, but the environment around him bends because of it. Why didn't they just leave him cloaked? When he shows his real form, that's when the CGI looks bad. How did nobody be like, no, just keep the mystery. Keep him cloaked, and it's fine.
Yeah, he turns from the statue into Reptile, and then he cloaks. So you could have had Shang Tsung standing there looking like an idiot talking to a statue, but then you realize, oh, wait, no, the statue just disappeared. Wow, that's cool. What's going on with that? But no, you needed the scene where the CG monster growls at the screen and breaks the illusion.
There's also I like that Shang Tsung in the A Taste of Things to Come scene. He mentions that not only is this going on, but later you'll meet Prince Goro. He drops his name. Mm-hmm. After the dude gets exploded by Sub-Zero, we see Liu Kang and Shang Tsung, or what? Let's just call them the trio or the triple threat. Our babyface triple threat are walking down.
Triple threat. It's got Shane Douglas and Bam Bam Bigelow running around Mortal Kombat.
Goddamn Chris Candido.
Yeah.
We see the triple threat walking down the hallway, and then we see Goro's hand on the cage. So he's listening to them, he's watching them, and we hear him growl. That's 2 times now that we've been hinted at. This Goro guy is here and he's big business. You don't want to see Goro. He's bad news. I'm just throwing that out there. 2 times he's been established as a big deal. I'm not judging any movies that would come in the future who did not give him this treatment. I'm just saying.
It's very reminiscent of the first game, where in the as the credit screens roll before you put in any coins or anything to start playing, you get occasional flashes that say Goro lives, and that's pretty much all you get until you eventually have to fight him. So he is kind of living up to his legend of nobody really knowing much about him, but he is something to be feared.
To that point, in the endurance round that takes place in Goro's lair, when you have to fight 2 guys back to back, the screen will shake and you'll hear him growling, but you still don't see him. And it starts to make you think, fuck, do I want to beat these 2 guys? Because then I got to see Goro, who apparently lives. So let's just we'll skip over a little bit of dialogue here, and we'll just, because we're already an hour into this.
Right? Yeah, movie's almost over in real time.
God damn it! You
knew this was gonna happen.
You know what? I did. We've got Kano sitting at this big fucking table, because he wasn't there for the taste of things to come. He actually gets to enjoy his food and sip his red wine out of a gigantic goblet, which is filled to the brim. So, how Kano wasn't shit-faced, I have no idea. But he's talking to somebody, and then we find out it's Goro. And Goro is not only answering Kano's questions, but then he goes on to explain who Shang Tsung is, why Shang Tsung is so special, how all of the things around Kano are happening right now because of Shang Tsung. Goro is well-spoken. He's a gentleman. He's mad that Kano has poor manners. Like, dude, Goro is fucking awesome. Tell me about Goro. Tell me about this scene.
One of the things that I actually appreciated most about this scene is you do see that Goro has a bit of a sense of humor on him.
Yeah.
It's just like Kano's like, oh yeah, so he's like an underworld boss. You know, I'm like a boss back home. And Goro just like spills his wine. He's like, how lucky for them, back home. And he just looks right in Kano's face. Like, here that means nothing, basically. But I'm like, wow, Goro, what a move. I love it.
That part is great, and that's right when, like, Goro probably wanted to, like, fold Kano up into a little ball and throw him across the room at that point.
Yeah, he's like, this guy making a mess on my table. Like,
you're eating all my food and shit.
Yeah.
Because if Goro didn't want him to be there, Kano would not be there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One other line, though, that actually I never, again, noticed until the last time I watched this movie, where he's talking about Shang Tsung. He's just, like, he's, like, putting him over. It's like, those who challenge Shang Tsung become his slaves. And I'm thinking, like, fuck. Does that mean maybe Sub-Zero and Scorpion got an attitude with Shang Tsung and he just put him under his power? Like, because he did describe them as his slaves.
I like that, and that's kind of, when you asked me how I would handle them, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Is the only way that he could get them under his control is if he got one over on him. Like, if they stepped to him and he was like, listen, do you know who I am? And, like, just fucked him up. But
so yeah, like, as soon as Goro said that, I was like, okay, well that's my headcanon now. That's why they don't do anything in this movie except just work for Shang Tsung.
I love that when Goro does the thing that you talked about, the how lucky for them back home, and he's right in Kano's face. Mm-hmm. Luckily, Shang Tsung comes in to, like, cut the tension. And he basically just agrees with Kano, or with Goro, and buries Kano to his face. He's like, look at him. No dignity, no manners. Yet in the realm of Earth, men like this can amass godlike status. And Kano's like, I'd like to go back to my amassing pretty soon, if you don't mind. Fucking, like, just everyone shitting on Kano, and Kano being like, yeah, I don't care. Look, I got shit to do. When do I get paid?
Yeah.
Because he is scum.
And Shang Tsung being like, oh yeah, he's a terrible, terrible human being, but you know what? On his planet, people go for that shit. And I'm like, wow, Shang Tsung telling the future.
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah.
This is another area too where I love this Shang Tsung so much, and he's organized, he's got a master plan, he's an evil genius, because Raiden has told Liu Kang to his face, you're not ready, and, like, we have work to do. But Shang Tsung is telling Goro, because Goro's like, I will smash Liu Kang. I saw that puny fool in the hallway. And Shang Tsung's telling him, like, do not get overconfident. Like, I know what I'm doing. And it's not just Liu Kang we have to worry about, but Kitana as well. And then Goro even questions that. And Shang Tsung is like, she's the heir to Outworld. She's 10,000 years old. She doesn't like us. This Shang Tsung sees all of it. He knows everybody who's got shit to say about him. It's all figured out. Like, Liu Kang at this point would get killed by, like, probably almost any of these guys. And Shang Tsung's telling him, look, I'm telling you he's a problem. So stay focused.
I also like when they did bring up Kitana and that Goro's like, oh, the Emperor's adopted daughter? I'm like, oh, so that's just known at this point by these characters? Because I always was under the impression that it was kind of like she found out after the fact. Like in MK9, I don't know if it was a retcon or if it was like just kind of a retelling of the original story, but like Kitana basically gets told to her face by Shao Kahn. He's just like, oh yeah, no, you're not even really my daughter, so I had Shang Tsung make me a daughter because you suck and I hate you.
Because you suck and I hate you.
Well, yeah, but in this one it seems like everybody just knows that Kitana is like adopted by Shao Kahn. I'm like, oh okay, secret's out here.
Now that you're bringing it up, I don't remember which one is the real case, but I don't know, in my head I feel like the story was that Shao Kahn fucked up her dad and not even like adopted her, but stole her. You know?
Yeah.
But I don't remember. You could be right. And MK9, being that they played with things the way they did, made it a little confusing. But when you bring up Katana there, instantly, we got Johnny Cage with Sonya. Liu Kang is instantly enamored with Katana. And I don't blame him because Talisa Soto is hot as fuck in this movie. But I love, they find out when they're listening in. Shang Tsung is like, Princess Katana's 10,000 years old. There's a part later, just right after this, where they're looking for Katana. And Johnny Cage is like, Liu, she's 10,000 years old. And Liu Kang goes, so what?
Yeah. He's already making excuses, this guy.
Where did we go directly after they were listening in? Because they peace out because they're like, fuck, we gotta get out of here. Is this where we go?
Yeah, they like knocked over a cup or something, and they were like on the run now because Shang Tsung figured out that somebody's in there with them. So now they're moving, and they Reptile spots him and spits in Liu Kang's face, which I guess is just a mild annoyance in this movie. Like, it's not deadly at all. Liu Kang's just like, oh man, what the hell?
It's Tajiri's green mist, not the red mist that blinded Nydia.
Yes. So, but then I guess they spot Katana, or they know that Katana is like somewhere, and they're like, Johnny Cage is like, oh, I can smell her perfume. She went this way. As they're clearing out cobwebs, I'm like, she did not, unless she put the cobwebs back up when she walked that way. Like,
that's her superpower.
Yeah, she's intangibility. No, that's Jade. She's not in this movie. But yeah, they end up actually going in a circle and winding up in the dining hall, or Goro's little dining hall there, where we just had the previous scene, where they're then attacked by some ninjas, and we get a nice little display of teamwork. They're doing some tag team moves, and Raiden congratulates them on beating the first group of jobbers, but then a bigger group is behind them, and that's when we get the moment you talked about before, where they're about to attack, and Raiden is just going like, I don't think so, and shoots a little lightning in the air, and they just walk away. And again, Johnny Cage gets a great line where he points at him. He's like, you guys got lucky.
Yeah, you're lucky he stopped us.
Yeah, that's it.
Two things about this scene. Number one, I used to steal so many moves from this fight of the Triple Threat versus the Goon Squad with my action figures, and then just like when you're a little kid and you're in the backyard and you're just fighting like imaginary dudes, I would steal so many of these, like Johnny grabbing the stick and then hitting the guy with like a spinning back fist. I thought that was the coolest shit. Anytime I play with my action figures who had like flexible legs, I would do the double jump split kick that Liu Kang does that knocks the guys down the stairs. So many cool spots here. But I have a funny thing to point out. Toward the end of the scene, after Raiden intervenes, when Liu Kang and Sonya and Johnny Cage come together and they walk through the sea of goons, if you look to the right of the screen, the guy who had just gotten clotheslined and did the backflip is clearly just laying on a gym mat that's on the floor.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't see that.
You couldn't see it on the tape back in the day, but now you can see it. And I just think that's funny. I don't know if that part was never intended to be in the shot, and now that everything is widescreen, it's just different, but I love little shit. It's like seeing the curtain earlier when they're on the ship. I just love little shit like that.
Yeah.
I still have so many more notes. Is this where we go right to Liu versus the dreadlock guy?
My next note, is like after Katana went this way and like the cobwebs, thing. My next note is Liu cartwheel kick to Lion guy. So that's where we're at now.
Yeah, this fucking guy who everybody in the History of Mortal Kombat Part 6 comments who mentioned this guy, because I talked about it, I'm like, this guy's not from any of the games. They don't give him a name in the movie. And in the credits, they seem to refer to him as Fighting Monk. Everyone was like, actually, this guy was on a show called WMAC Masters. And it aired in the 90s. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. I guess I should have just talked about his actual background instead of who this character was supposed to be. But he does growl like a big cat. You nailed it with Lion Guy.
Yeah. Well, apparently, like, some of the people in this movie and in, like, similar like martial arts movies were also on that WMAC like Masters TV show. I remember the show. I never was like watching it regularly, but I do remember kind of what it was. And I couldn't tell you any of the people on it unless somebody, like points out like, oh no, that's where he's from. Oh, okay, cool. But yeah, that was my first note about it, was Liu Kang doing like his MK1 like fatality move, that cartwheel like kick thing.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, that's not what knocks him down for the count. He gets like a front drop kick, and that puts him down.
Yeah, right to the fucking chest, a double foot drop kick.
Yeah, and I have like, what kind of 70s NWA Crockett booking is this? A drop kick? That finishes him? Okay.
Oh man, I you know what though, I do love how Liu Kang beats Fighting Monk, or Lion Guy as we'll call him, and then Shang Tsung swoops in and steals the guy's soul.
Yeah,
like Liu Kang did all the work, and now you get to reap the. And what was Liu Kang doing? Why was he not like, hey, don't kill him? Like, he was standing right there. Why didn't he intervene?
I guess Shang Tsung just like, he does what he wants, but he also didn't give Liu Kang the option to finish him, which I thought was. I was like, all right. I mean, maybe he just knew he wouldn't have. I don't know.
You're probably right. We should note here though that we went from the Triple Threat versus the Jobbers to this. This whole middle portion of the movie is all fights. It's fight to fight to fight to fight to fight, and I love it. It feels like playing the game. Because we go from Triple Threat versus the Goon Squad to Liu versus Fighting Monk Lion Guy, straight into Sonya versus Kano.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me about this fight.
Well, I mean, like you say, it's fight to fight to fight, but you do get little bits of established story in this, unlike something like Annihilation, where it really is just fight after fight after fight and gives you nothing. This, like, Sonya and Kano, you finally get the payoff. Like, these two don't like each other, and you get dialogue from Kano that explains in detail how he killed her partner with this knife, and, like, Shang Tsung basically starts the fight by, like, telling Sonya, he's like, hey, I have something for you, and she, like, blows him off, and he's like, no, I'm being serious. This is something you want. So, this fight starts, and, they're trading blows. Like, it could be anybody's fight here at any given point, but Sonya eventually locks in, like, a head scissor takedown, and Kano begs for mercy with a poor choice of words and says, give me a break, and she breaks his neck, kills him right there.
I've got a personal story that I can inject here, where when I was a kid, with Kano's accent, it was a little hard for me to understand him, and again, the sound quality was not the best on the VHS tape. I thought he was being condescending to her and treating her like a little girl. I thought he said, come on, Sonya, I'll give you a bike. As in, like, I have a gift for you, and if you let me go, you can have it. That's how stupid I was. Because I was, like, 5 when this movie came out, and I probably saw it for the first time when I was, like, 6 or 7 or whatever. And come on, Sonya, I'll give you a bike. But the other thing that I want to note here is that Bridget Wilson, a.k.a. Veronica Vaughn, who played Sonya Blade here, she did, as far as I'm aware, all of her own stunts. So clearly, we don't have a stunt woman standing in for her here. And when I say clearly, it's because if you're like a martial arts fan or an actual martial artist, you can tell she has zero actual technique to what she's doing. And when she throws a spinning wheel kick at Sonya, she falls down. Or she throws it at Kano and she falls on her ass. But they kept it in. She throws the kick, falls down, gets back up, and then kicks him again.
I don't know how true this is, but I heard that I think the role of Sonya was meant to go to Cameron Diaz.
That is true.
Who injured herself and had to leave the movie. So Bridget Wilson stepped in. Now all the training had already been done. Like, she had no time to actually, like, train with any of it. So I guess that might play into why out of all the actors who were doing any of their own stunt work, she would have been the least prepared for it.
That is accurate. Cameron Diaz broke her wrist, so she got taken out of the role. And in this very fight, Bridget Wilson dislocated her shoulder.
Jeez.
And they, on set, popped it back in, and she was ready to go. So, shout out to Bridget Wilson for being a badass bitch.
Bridget. Talk to him, Bridget. I know you're listening.
I give a quick shout out to Christina Applegate. Anybody who's an Eric Andre fan gets that. I don't know why I felt the need to do that right now. But, yeah, fight to fight. We got this big old, basically arcade tower here. We go from Sonya takes out Kano straight to the forest where Johnny Cage is fighting Scorpion.
This is, for me, this is the fight scene in the movie for me. And I know most people pretty much, it's neck and neck between this one and the Liu Kang Reptile one. I tend to prefer this one, but man, what a ride. You got different locations, you got different actual moves being done by the characters, because a lot of the time in this movie you're not seeing their signature moves being done. They're just trading punches and kicks and blocks and stuff. Usually at the end of the fight is when you get one or two big spots. But in this one, Scorpion starts right away with his signature get over here. You get a shadow kick from Johnny Cage. You get, big time fatality. You get a reference to the friendship. You get this is probably the most Mortal Kombat-ish fight scene in this movie to me.
I didn't think about it from the standpoint of the moves, but you're totally right. And if you want to throw in even another one, when Johnny throws the shadow kick and they go to the Netherrealm, you could kind of say that's like Scorpion's teleport punch. When he would fly out of the back of the screen and come out the other side. Because Johnny Cage's kick didn't take them to the Netherrealm. That was all Scorpion.
Oh, yeah.
So even another one. This is the first time I ever thought this. And tell me if this makes sense to you at all. But I love the Netherrealm set. Because that's where I assume this is supposed to be, is in Scorpion's home of the Netherrealm.
Yeah, because he welcomes him, right?
Yeah, welcome.
So I'm all right, yeah, this is Scorpion's front door, basically.
In the games, it's all fire, and it's all lava, and it's these towers with bodies on them, and obviously that would be extremely expensive to put together. But this practical set in the movie is awesome. It's this fiery red and orange setting without any fire, but it's covered in this torn canvas and all these broken ladders and collapsed bridges. It looks like this may have been something at some point, but it has fallen to such a state of disrepair, and there's rotted skeletons and fucking limbs everywhere. It's so cool. But this setting, along with Scorpion not only speaking, but kind of getting right to the point. Johnny Cage does this whole gymnastics routine to just create distance and get away from Scorpion. And Scorpion goes from welcome to, he sees him up there and goes, get down here, and he kicks the bridge and breaks it and Johnny falls. I was getting major Freddy Krueger vibes from Scorpion.
That makes a lot of sense, especially with the setting being what it is.
Yeah, he brought you to where he's more at home. I don't know if I would say he's quippy, but he speaks and he gets right to the point. I was like, man, I'm getting Freddy Krueger vibes. and
not for nothing, but he is Scorpion. There's no questioning the voice, and the things that he is saying are things that fans of the games would have instantly recognized.
100%.
I actually read, and similar to the Liu Kang and Reptile fight from later, I read that this was kind of added in.
Yep.
This was after they maybe first tested the movie with a focus group. They were it needs a little bit of something extra. And so at least the Netherrealm scene of this fight was added in afterwards. And I think that really shows, because the physicality is turned way up from that point in this fight. You don't get a lot of contact with them in the forest. Johnny Cage goes for his kick, and I think that was meant to originally finish the fight. But when they actually teleport into the Netherrealm, these guys are just beating the hell out of each other. And this is pre-Annihilation, so they hadn't discovered like wire work yet. So these guys are really just trading actual like hits. Like I think the actor who played Johnny Cage said that Chris Casamassa actually did come down on his back with a kick and really like hurt him. And he's just like, I couldn't let him know because I'm supposed to be playing this tough guy, so we have to finish the scene.
You're totally right about that. It was an axe kick to the kidney, and Lyndon Ashby wound up pissing blood after they shot this. And when you talk about the wire work, that is totally accurate, because there's a part in this that has always stood out to me, where the guy playing Scorpion, he like, I think either Johnny catches his kick or whatever, and then he backflips him. He like throws his foot up, so Scorpion does a backflip. Now the guy playing Scorpion does the backflip. Now you would think you want to come down either pancake flat or maybe knees and elbows to like take some of the impact off of your actual organs. But I always notice that his feet get caught on a railing and he just hits the fucking ground super hard. And I remember even watching it as a kid thinking like, being able to separate it from the characters. As a kid, I was like, that guy looks like he got hurt. There's no way that shit didn't hurt, dude.
Yeah, that's something. That's what I definitely wrote in my notes. Is like, there's a lot. This fight feels like there's a lot more impact to it. Like, as soon as it transitions into the different location, they're like, all right, let's go. Let's give them a show. Like, so I love this one.
They work around the PG-13 rating here really well, too, because obviously it was a money move. They didn't want to go rated R because they figure a lot of the people who are going to see it are kids who play the video games. Times have changed now. You realize that people of all ages play video games, but the mid-90s were different, I guess. Mm-hmm. But they aimed for the PG-13 to keep the market as big as possible. And obviously you can't have Johnny Cage cutting Scorpion's head in half and his brain and blood fly out and all that shit. So Scorpion's blood is lava for some reason. And is that a little bit of a PG-13 cop-out? You could say that, but does it look fucking sick? Yes, it does. Like, when Johnny throws the spear and it catches Scorpion's right arm and the lava shoots out and, like, flame shoots out, I'm sorry, that's dope. That is so cool.
I definitely think that, visually speaking, purely from an aesthetic for this movie, since this is, at this point, he's already taken his mask off and done the fatality, which Johnny Cage manages to block because he finds a shield on the ground nearby. So, like, you're seeing Scorpion, this is his big spot where he finally is, like, showing the thing from the game that people love about Scorpion is, like, that he pulls off his mask and it's a skeleton underneath. Oh, man, that's awesome, cool. Everybody that likes the game is marking out at this moment. So we've established now, this is not a human. We can just take that a step further and have him bleed lava. That's fine.
I was a little thrown off when I was a kid watching this movie with the friendship reference. So after Johnny Cage cuts Scorpion all up with the shield and his body is engulfed in flames, Johnny Cage is like, oh, this is bad news. I gotta get away from him. Scorpion's body explodes and we see, like, one of his legs and one of his hands, like, fly through the air. And then a signed, like, 8x10 of Johnny that says, to my biggest fan, Johnny Cage. It's autographed. It lands on the ground and it burns up. When I was a kid, I didn't really understand the concept of that was just a nod to the fans of a friendship. When I was a little kid, I was like, oh, Scorpion, like, in a past life, was Johnny Cage's biggest fan.
He just carries his 8x10.
Yeah, like, that must have been in his pocket.
That's awesome.
Obviously, that's what goes through your head when you're 6, 7 years old. I've grown up now and I realize what fan service is, and that's what that was. Sure. Let me ask you a question as a sidebar real quick. When did the term fan service change? Because when I was a kid, this was fan service. Or Shang Tsung saying, like, fatality. That was fan service. Right. Now, people look at, like, these anime titty video games and, like, the jiggling boobs and stuff. It's like, that's fan service. When did that term change?
I don't know. I mean, like, I almost still think, like, for the most part, it's kind of the first description you gave, where it's like a wink and a nod to somebody who's already a fan.
Yeah, that's
You're not
how
trying
I
to bring
use
in
it.
new fans by having Shang Tsung say fatality, because a new fan wouldn't get that.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be no point of reference there. But yeah, I don't know. Anybody that's saying, like, oh, this new video game has bigger titties, like, that's not necessarily fan service. That's just you trying to get thirsty dudes to buy your game. Cool. Like, you can acknowledge and admit it, and you'll probably sell some copies. But, like, I don't know. If the movie version of that game comes out and they do something from the game, that'll be better fan service.
When you say if you admit it, maybe you'll sell more copies. I actually have to continue this sidebar. I have a story
right.
for that. My girlfriend, the beautiful Tara Darcy, loves to play these like Japanese dating sim video games on her Switch and on her PC. Now, there's a difference between the ones that are like marketed towards girls and the ones that are marketed towards guys.
I can imagine. Okay.
Because the ones that she likes are all like these deep stories that with like branching paths, and there's all this like these romantic angles you can go down. Like one of them was like a Japanese mobster story, blah blah blah. But all like the guys are dressed real sharp and like they listen and all this shit. I was on the PlayStation store the other day. Tara's on her PC, and I go, "Hey babe, do you know this game?" And she turns around. I just figure it's like one of the games she plays. And this game is called like Sakura Succubus 3. And she goes, "No, what is that?" And I click on it. And it is all like Japanese schoolgirl anime drawings bodied out to death. Like
Sure.
the thickest thighs, the biggest boobs. And I'm like going through the slideshow. And she was like, these are not the games I play. And I was like, this is kind of making me uncomfortable, because the drawings of the girls, they looked too young. It was fucking weird. I'm just saying it. I'm putting it out there. It's weird. If that's your thing, that's fine. But I think it's fucking weird. Anyway. Where were we?
Well, yeah, you were talking about, like, where did that friendship picture come with, like, with Scorpion carrying it around.
Johnny's biggest fan.
Yeah, Johnny's biggest fan. My thing now, in 2021, watching this, I'm like, how did Johnny Cage get out of the Nether Realm?
Yeah, what did he do?
It's like in Dark Knight Rises, like, how did Batman get back to Gotham? I'm like, no, fuck that. 25 years ago, Johnny Cage is still finding his way out of the Nether Realm.
Oh shit. Canon-wise, what do you think they did? Did a portal just open up? Or all of those broken bridges and ladders, 50 feet to the right, did he find a ladder that just wasn't broken? And he, like, found a tunnel. Oh, maybe he found a tunnel that led to one of those fucking balls.
Oh, so he was in it. Yeah, and he wouldn't have gotten the chance to talk about him because he died at the beginning of the next movie. So when Raiden started describing him, he would have been like, oh, yeah, I took one of those to get out of Scorpion's house.
Scorpion's house?
Well, he welcomed me. I don't know.
You know what? Now we stumbled on the real lore.
Yeah, if only Johnny had survived long enough to be like, oh, that's right, we can go anywhere.
So, Johnny Cage... And I want to point out real quick for the record, I did not have a problem with the 2021 movie. People were like, there was no tournament. They're right, but that wasn't like one of my big sticking points.
Right.
This movie clearly has a tournament. These fights are organized. There's an audience. There's like a setting where they're taking place. I'm just throwing that out there. Because for the next fight, we have Kitana versus Liu Kang, and it's another fight that's being overseen by Shang Tsung. Like,
yeah, I was
on
going
the
to say,
beach.
most of these fights are being personally overseen by Shang Tsung. It's very, very much like a martial arts tournament where throughout the course of the day, like, you're progressing or being eliminated as, you know, things go on, and the same panel is basically watching every fight.
When I covered... I ranked all the fights in the history of Mortal Kombat Part 6, and I didn't even include this one, Because Katana and Liu Kang don't really fight. They're kind of just putting on, like, a sparring show because they're talking to each other throughout the whole thing. You can tell Liu Kang doesn't know if he can trust her, but Katana's really not trying to fuck him up at all. She's just giving him tips. So she tells him, in your next fight, use the element which brings life. And at the time, he's like, what?
I like that he played that so well. He's like, the fuck are you talking about? Like, we're supposed to be fighting.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I would be too. I was like, okay, number one, you're really hot. Number two, you're 10,000 years old. That's weird. So you must be good at some of this shit if no one's killed you in 10,000 years.
Number three, you're telling me about my next fight, which means I win this one, so I don't have to try.
Yeah, you're putting me over, so...
This whole thing is like an information, like, deposit. And it's also, like... This is the one kind of flaw that I'll find in Shang Tsung's plan, where he's told Goro, he's told Reptile, hey, keep these people apart. And then he's like, fuck, they're the next bracket. Like, I would have thought he would just be like, nah, Liu Kang gets a bye, Katana, you're eliminated. There's something, like, just keep them apart. Because, again, if she doesn't tell him that, he doesn't throw the bucket of water at Sub-Zero in the next scene.
Yeah, if anything of me trying to defend it would be just that. It would be me trying to defend it without... Mm-hmm. Because they could have just booked around it, like you said.
Yeah, Shang Tsung could have called an audible somewhere. Or just lock Katana in her room and be like, oh, I guess she forfeits.
And he's pulled tricky shit beforehand, so we know that he's already thought about underhanded stuff. Yeah, this is a hole.
Yep.
That's a little bit of a hole.
This movie is not perfect. We're, both big fans of it, I think, but we can acknowledge its shortcomings.
You know what? We can book it even better than they did. Let's say Liu Kang is on the beach waiting for her and she doesn't show up. And Shang Tsung is like, it seems as though the princess forfeits. And Liu Kang is like, what happened? I don't know about this. And then maybe when Liu Kang leaves the beach, he's walking down a hallway and he finds her, like, in a cell. And he's like, what are you doing there? And she's like, Shang Tsung trapped me in here. Look, for your next fight. And then she tells him. How hard would that have been?
Yeah, canonically, it would have made a little bit more sense. I mean, I don't know that she would have needed to remain so cryptic. She could have just been like, hey, listen, we're going to leave buckets. Just throw the water.
Yeah, like, what if Liu Kang wasn't, like... he wasn't very good in, like, science class or biology. Use the element which brings life. And then Liu Kang is, like, fighting Sub-Zero. I don't see dirt anywhere.
Air? Okay.
He breathes on him.
Yeah. Trying to blow on him like a candle or something. Like, it's just not...
I don't know shit about the elements.
That's another good, like, MK11 callback is when Liu Kang and Sub-Zero face off. He's just like, oh, this will be easy. And Sub-Zero's like, what did Katana tell you?
I love that.
Yeah, he's like, all I need is a pail of water.
In my notes, I may have missed something, but it looks like we go from Katana Liu Kang. Do we go straight to Liu Kang versus Sub-Zero?
That's the next thing I have too. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you see a hooded figure leave, like he's balancing 2 buckets of water on a stick. He puts them down and he leaves, and it turns out that's Raiden.
Yeah,
and you see Liu Kang make his entrance, and then it's a very, like, quiet scene, but, like, you see this big staircase in the background, and Sub-Zero just kind of calmly walks down the stairs, and I'm like, fuck, that's pretty good.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It works. I'm like, what an entrance.
I love and it's like, the doors that are open are super tall, and they're, like, jagged on the sides, so, like, these circular doors. And he walks down, and they stare at each other for a second, and then they both, like, slowly take their fighting stances. No one has to say anything. We don't need Bruce Buffer in the red corner. Like, they understand what they're here for, and now it's time to get down to business.
Yep.
That said, Liu Kang versus Sub-Zero sucks as a fight. Like, the scene is really cool, but unlike Johnny Cage and Scorpion, which you said was super high impact, this one's a lot of gymnastics and then right into the finishing spot.
Yeah, you could tell they didn't have to go back and, like, improve on this one, because they probably were like, oh, we'll throw a Reptile fight in there later for Liu Kang, and that'll be the hard fought. So Sub-Zero, unfortunately, doesn't get a lot in here. He does some cool, like, kick backflips off the wall and stuff like that. So it's, I mean, as acrobatic display goes, these guys put on a show. But, like, as a fight scene, especially coming off of Johnny Cage and Scorpion that we just saw, this was definitely not anywhere near in that league.
Here's a question I have that I've never really thought about before. Sub-Zero is when Liu Kang throws the water and it like goes through the ice force field, forms a spike, and it sticks into the wall. What was Sub-Zero doing? Because he takes a stance and we can see an ice ball has formed in his hands, but pulsating around him are bigger and bigger spheres of ice that are freezing the entire room. Was that ball in his hands just for show, and his plan was to freeze the whole room, and Liu had no escape? Like, what was the... Because it took him fucking forever to do it. So what was he doing there?
That's another thing I don't know. I'm like, that's kind of another hole. Because, I mean, Liu Kang gets the idea for the bucket because he lands on the other bucket and spills it over. And he's like, oh, the element which brings life, which he's conveniently reminded of by a voiceover from Katana.
Who also walks into the room.
To remind him, yeah. Like, it's like, okay. But, yeah, I don't know. Sub-Zero's, like, got, like, at that point, an ice force field that I think, like, hurts Liu Kang to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, all right. He's taking his time doing his move or whatever, unless he's terraforming the whole place like 2021 Sub-Zero did with Cole's family in the fucking MMA gym.
Oh my god.
Yep, that's what his plan was, maybe? I don't know.
Use your uppercut.
Yeah, that's, you know, Liu Kang, Cole could have just uppercutted through that.
You're
shit.
goddamn right he could have.
But
you know what?
Another minor hole, a small blemish on the plot of this movie, perhaps.
Speaking of Cole, we're going to sidestep that, but I'm going to use Cole versus Goro to springboard us to Johnny Cage versus Goro.
Oh,
Before we get to Johnny Cage versus Goro there, we get Shang Tsung approaching Goro, who's still sitting on his throne, because he is the prince of the Shokan after all. And I love that there are 4 armrests on that chair. So they built it specifically for Goro, which I love. But Shang Tsung or Goro's like, is it time? And Shang Tsung like confirms that it is. Now we see, and some of the shots use the same people. Like we see the same guy hit the rocks in different ways a few times. Mm-hmm. But if we are ignoring that and we are treating every one of these bumps into the rocks as a Goro fight, in just a few seconds, Goro just went 20-0. And all of these other people, because I counted all the bumps, all of these other people who were here for the tournament, who have probably beaten other jobber characters off screen, have made their way up the bracket to Goro, and he just wiped the floor with 20 fucking dudes.
Yeah.
That is another thing that this movie did to establish Goro as a big problem, and I love that.
Like, even if it's just like different angles of the same guy and like they're not all separate people, those are still the guys who made it to Goro, and there's, even if there's like 5 or 6 of them, they're still they're getting thrown around on the rocks like they're nothing.
I'm thinking about this now. We just got to Johnny Cage versus Goro, right?
Well, we once again must return to the living legend Art Lean.
Okay, oh, here we go. I was going to say, in my notes now I'm looking closely, I wrote, Goro goes 20-0, 21-0, R.I.P. Art. Tell me about Goro and Art Lean.
Well, it doesn't go well for Art. He,
you
see
say.
him shadow boxing a little bit, and Goro walks in. Art, he's taken aback by what he's seen, which begs the question: like all those fights that we saw earlier, was Art not watching any of those? Like, does he not? Is this the first time he's seeing Goro? Because that's the impression that I got.
Maybe he was also competing against other people.
That could have, yeah. So basically, what happens is like Art does not perform well. Because how do you against a guy like this? You can't train for this.
No, he's fucked.
Yeah, entirely. And, Goro gets the best of him. Shang Tsung says finish him. Goro says time to die and, chops his neck.
Great Kali chop.
Yep, Kali chops. After everything Goro does, by the way, he's posing like Hogan in there. Arms up. He's milking the crowd. Everybody's loving it. And, Shang Tsung takes Art Lean's soul.
Go ahead.
It's, I found out something that I didn't know until pretty recently, but, like, in the novelization of the movie, like, whoever wrote that book, like, interpreted Goro as, like, a more honorable character. So instead of saying, like, time to die, Goro kind of looks at him and says, like, you have fought well, and then kills him.
I like that.
Which actually comes back later with the Johnny Cage fight, which we'll get to. But, like, like, Goro's not just, like, a big rage monster who wants to kill everything in that book, I guess. But, yeah, that's what happened.
I feel like that kind of fits better because earlier on we established that Goro is a well-spoken, intelligent... he's even the general of the Shokan army. So
yeah.
he's not what's his name from the Goonies? Sloth. You know what I mean? So him looking at this guy who was obviously a martial arts champion in whatever he did, because like even Johnny Cage knows who he is, and he's like an A-list dickhead, but even he recognizes Art Lean. Goro would, and there's another thing. Shang Tsung says flawless victory, but Art Lean landed like 10 significant strikes on Goro. So what are you talking about?
That's like, and if you got a chance to check it out, when I sent that video by the Fighters Den about who is Art Lean.
I did indeed.
Dude, every time I watch that video, I'm freaking sitting there crying, laughing at how like just the way he articulates Art in that like deadpan delivery with wrestling terminology. It's great. But he makes that point too. He's just like, they didn't even know what flawless victory was in this movie. Like, Art Lean got his hits in. The last fight with Liu Kang, like, he's saying flawless victory, but it was a hard-fought fight. Like,
I will say, I've never seen anything by Fighters Den, and it's probably just because anytime, like, I'm going to give a shout-out to one of your boys here, Jerry Horror, who has a podcast called The Following. Or The Offering, not The Following. The word follow was on my screen, and I was looking at it as I said it. The Offering with Jerry Horror. I've actually started to listen to the show on your recommendation, and I quite enjoy it. But
it's good stuff. Jerry's fun.
I have to skip the Halloween 3 episode, because I'm just about to write about Halloween 3, and any time that I'm working on something, I avoid everyone else's work on it, because...
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
I feel like there's always a chance of, like, accidental influence, or maybe... you think you came up with something, but you're borrowing it from somewhere you heard before. It's the same reason people ask me to do, like, do the history of Castlevania. I'm like, I can't. I have watched James Rolfe's retrospective on it so many times. Number one, I can't do it better than he did. Number two, I would be trying so hard to not borrow what he said, just because it's so deep in my brain. But... the Fighters Den video about Art Lean, I want to recommend it to everybody. I'll put the link in the description. It is so good that it kind of pissed me off. Like, every once in a while, I will see something, and I'll get mad that I didn't come up with it. And this Art Lean video is so good that I was watching it. I was 2 minutes in, and I was like, fuck! Like, this is really good.
First, I think it is basically like the first 3 minutes of that video are him explaining this entire character and everything, like, because you don't need a lot of time to explain literally everything about this Art Lean character. And then the rest of the video is like a let's play of him kind of trying to like rebuild the good name of Art Lean through whatever, Armageddon, I think, the game.
Yeah.
But even his running commentary during the fighting is funny, but just him trying to set it up is it's like such a highlight for me. I love that video.
I love how, because obviously Goro kills Art Lean and Shang Tsung takes his soul. The way that we get to how does, like, what do you mean who is Art Lean, how did he come back, is he was like, all the spirits coming out of Shang Tsung at the end of the movie. Art Lean's spirit came out too and was like, I'll do better with this second chance. And then he's like, he's got to do something. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
But I will say, after Goro kills Art Lean, how do I want to word this? The way Goro offers the corpse of Art Lean up to Shang Tsung, he's down on his knees, with his top set of arms, he's holding up Art's body. And with his bottom set of arms, his hands are in like a martial arts or like a praying pose. And that is so fucking cool looking that back in the day, I had I had a Goro and a Johnny Cage action figure. And they were like the little like 3.5-inch versions. They came in a 2-pack that I got at KB Toys back in the day.
Oh, yeah. Like the little G.I. Joe ones.
Yes. And I would always have Goro hold somebody's body in that pose because I thought that pose was so cool. And I wish I knew where those figures are now, but I think they're just lost to time. I don't have them anymore.
It's definitely a cool visual.
Where do we go from here?
Well, at this point, like, we see, like, the main characters, like, all kind of, like, regrouping and discussing, like, oh, crap, what do we do about this guy? And Raiden kind of, like, tells them, like, you guys have to still learn your lessons if you want to, like, get any further. He's like, you are afraid of this, you're afraid of that, and, like, basically just, like, lays it all on the table. He's like, so now what are you going to do with it? And Johnny Cage is the first one to, like, kind of step into his own and be like, I'm going to go fight Goro. Fuck it. So you just see Shang Tsung, again, he's just like, you want to challenge Goro? Like, again, just bringing the whole scene together. If I can also point out, like, for me, apart from Shang Tsung, Johnny Cage is, like, the highlight of this movie.
Yes.
And so, like, the scene, like, they don't get to interact off each other a lot, but this scene was just, like, it just made me so happy. And Shang Tsung being like, all right, as absurd as this request is, I will grant it in exchange for I get to fight the winner or somebody else of my choosing. And I'm like, oh, that's dirty. But, like, that leads into the whole thing that we've been establishing since the beginning is he's just, like, going to challenge Sonya.
Yeah, he goes for it because he's like, perfect. This is how I'm going to get the opportunity to enact my plan where Sonya turns me down and I win by forfeit. And also, yeah, Johnny Cage, go ahead and fight Goro. I would love to watch that. Because Raiden has been telling Johnny Cage the whole time, you're going to fight overly emotional and it's going to cost you. And so now we get to Johnny Cage and Goro, and he doesn't do that. He goes in with a game plan. But before the fight, I want to say that you covered Johnny Cage tells Shang Tsung, I want the fight. We also see Johnny Cage and Sonya in front of this beautiful sunset where Johnny Cage is telling Sonya, here's what I'm going to do. I think now is the time to do it. And I can't let what happened to Art happen to you. And Sonya's like, don't you dare do this for me, Johnny Cage. You're the most egotistical, self-centered. And he's like, you forgot good looking. As he walks away, and it's like, God damn, Johnny Cage is the man, dude. Come on.
Gets her on the way out with that one.
So he goes into the... Oh, and Johnny Cage also tells Raiden, like, I'm gonna do it. I don't care what you say. And we see Raiden go, like, finally one of them understands.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, so Raiden's confident here. Raiden doesn't think Johnny Cage is walking into his death. He knows what's going on.
Swerve, bro. Raiden's in on it.
So Johnny walks into this fight with the lesson of Raiden, like, you're going to fight overly emotional and you're going to get got, but he doesn't. He goes in and immediately does the splits and punches Goro right in the balls.
Yep.
Because he knows if he stands hand to hand with Goro, he's going to get Art leaned. So I gotta do something. So we get the classic split balls punch, and Goro's selling it like $1 million. And I love Johnny Cage on his, like, because as soon as he hits him, he's not like, now I can beat him up and kill him. Punches him in the balls and immediately runs away.
Yep.
And we get
before selling his hand, he's like, oh, that hurt.
That's what I was gonna say. Is he shakes his hand out? It's like, man, that hurt. Which makes me think of a classic line I've stolen from The Rock 1,000,000 times, where I don't remember who it was, but back in the day, I think maybe Stephanie McMahon said that she told The Rock, like, I'll kick you in the balls, and he was like, you're gonna break your foot. And, like,
that's great.
I remember saying, like, when my brother and I would argue and get into fights when we were teenagers, he would say, like, I'll kick you in the nuts. You're gonna break your foot, pal. But guide me through the rest of this. Johnny's running away. What happens?
Well, Shang Tsung calls Goro an imbecile, which immediately, like, makes me think of like Shredder on the old Ninja Turtles cartoon. Like everyone is insufferable. He's calling them names, and it's so good. So he tells Goro, he's like, go kill this guy. What is wrong with you? So Johnny Cage, effectively, he leads Goro to like the edge of a cliff where there's like very little like space to fight, and he hides off to the side. He hits him with like the famous those are $500 sunglasses, asshole line, because Goro crushes his sunglasses at the start of the fight. Goro like pantomimes like a huh and gets kicked, and yeah, like eventually there's not much going on here. Like Johnny Cage like knocks Goro down and like punts him off the side of a cliff where Goro is hanging on, and we get the call back from the first scene that we saw in Johnny Cage where he says, "This is where you fall down." And, Goro falls into the void.
This is just a nitpick, but it's such a funny fall, too. Because, like,
yeah.
They're so, like, we've seen the mountain before, like, when they got to the island, and it's tall. But this mountain that they're on apparently is, like, way above the clouds. And there's, like, a thunderstorm going on halfway up the mountain.
Beneath where the characters are, yeah.
So... And Goro doesn't, like, fall straight down. He, like, kind of falls up and then goes down. If you look at the trajectory of where his body goes, and he it's not even, like, he falls into the clouds. He like, just gets smaller until you can't see him.
Yeah, like, any time you start mixing CG in this... It's a little ropey. Like that explosion weird. With Scorpion, kind of dodgy. And now this. Like, you're learning, guys. But, like now that I've got actually to this point in the movie where we've seen Goro, what do you think of Goro in this? Like, as an animatronic, as his appearance goes, like what do you reckon?
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it. I think he looks great. It's a little, like, we can't pretend it's not limited. His lip syncing doesn't really match up to what he's saying very well. Sometimes it looks good, but like when he says "How lucky for them back home," like it looks like shit. Like the movements don't line up at all. But I'm willing to forgive it because it was 1995. It's practical effects, but just like most of his movements, like there's a part where Arlene hits him with like a lead leg kick and then a spinning back kick. And because Goro was a guy in a costume that was also half puppet and was like 8 feet tall, Goro takes the kick and stumbles back for like 3 steps, and it looks so lifelike. This thing was incredible. I know it cost them millions of dollars to make this thing and operate it, and several people were working it all at once. They had to do it in tandem. The only part I think it looks a little fucked up is when Johnny Cage climbs up the mountain after doing the ball punch. He gets away. Goro walking toward the mountain, he looks like he's drunk and he's about to fall over. Why they didn't just reshoot that, I don't know. But it's only 1 second. If I hadn't seen this movie 200 times, I probably wouldn't notice that. So I'm kind of nitpicking. But all in all, I love it. I have to compare because it's all we have, but the 2021 version that's all CG, I hated it. I thought it looked like shit like the entire time. I thought it looked generic. I thought the lighting was off, his movements were off. I thought it looked like shit. So, practical effects all the way, even if they're a little janky sometimes. What do you think?
For the most part, I agree. Like the 2021, when we talked about that movie, I said, like, it's a fine design if it were in a game, but you can't put something like that in a real world setting, and it just doesn't, like, there's that uncanny valley effect where it's like, it's too obviously fake,
Yeah.
Whereas this, yeah, granted, it's a big dragon monster with 4 arms, but it's really on the set. Like, there is a sense of weight and height and scale to it. Proportionally speaking, maybe he's a little extended in the torso, but I get that you would need to do that to give all 4 of his arms a little bit of range, and if you want the puppet and the animatronics to work the way that you want them to work in the movie, you kind of have to, like, extend him a little bit.
Yeah.
But beyond that, like, I think he looks menacing. He looks like how Goro should look. He's imposing. He's tall. He's actually taller in this than he was in the game, if I recall. To me, it worked. And it certainly, again, comparing it to Reptile in this movie, like, Goro is way less silly than CG Reptile from 1995.
Yes.
Like, I like this. I think it's, given what they had, I think they did a good job. Going back to, actually, what I said before about Goro being different in the book, apparently that was the whole thing in this scene too, where Johnny Cage like knocks Goro off the as he's hanging there off the side of the cliff. Johnny Cage apparently like reaches for his hand and he's just like the fight's over, let me help you up. And Goro is like too proud. He's like, no, it's dishonorable for Shao Kahn to accept something like that. And so like Johnny Cage, having seen Goro's previous fights, he kind of looks down and he's like, you fought well. And Goro looks up and smiles and he says, thank you, so have you. And then he falls.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the callback to the line in the first Johnny Cage fight scene in this movie, I'd be like, dude, that's so much better.
It is.
But because of the callback, I'm like, all right, I can see they both have their credibility. But, like, man, somewhere that movie exists, and I would watch it.
The only thing that I can think maybe... Because I don't know which one was written first. The novelization was probably second, and maybe that guy was like, you know what, let's spruce this up a little bit.
Either that or, like, written concurrently with a working script or something that then got changed. Yeah, that's usually how stuff like that, I think, happens.
The only reason I can imagine that maybe they would have changed that for the movie is even with Goro not saying, you have fought well in the movie, him being like, ugh? And then, like, falling to his death and, like, screaming as he falls. I'm sorry, but I felt bad for him. Like, I know, like, what did Goro do that was so brutal that I'm supposed to hate him? He's a fighter, and he's been beating guys. Like, I don't hate Goro. I hate Shang Tsung because he killed Liu Kang's innocent brother. But, like, even watching it earlier today, when Goro fell, I was like, man... Fucking Goro.
He's just a guy.
Yeah.
He's just trying to sit at his throne.
Maybe because he's not a human, and like dude, any movie that has an animal in it and the animal gets hurt or the animal is even in trouble or sad, it bothers me so much. And Goro not looking like a human, maybe it was just like tugging at that part of my heartstrings. Like, everybody listening to this needs to understand you're talking to the guy who cried twice during Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Like, not even a spoiler, middle of the movie, when Caesar is taken away from James Franco and he's stuck in a cell and he takes like a rock and scratches into the concrete wall a picture of the window he used to look out in the attic to see James Franco go to work. In the theater, I was like... I cannot stand when animals are sad, dude. So Goro kind of like hitting an animal-ish nerve. I was like, no, not Goro. So man. Maybe they changed that because they didn't want him to be so sympathetic, because that would have probably really bothered me.
Yeah, that could be.
But before we you mentioned Reptile, and that's where we're going to go next. Before we get off of this, I want to talk about all of the guys who love watching Goro fight, all the red-hooded goons, especially these two twins who don't have the red hoods on. And every time Goro is in sight, they're like, the volume is always a 10, the enthusiasm is always a 10. It's, yeah, Goro! Everything he does. And if you watch in this fight, as like Johnny Cage is walking in and like before they've done anything, it's a bunch of goons, those two twins. There's also one guy in blue jeans, sleeveless flannel shirt with long hair. And he's looking at everybody like, huh? What is this? And I just want to know, who is that guy?
What's his story? How did he get there?
He looked like one of the guys from the band from Sonya looking for Kano in the nightclub. Like, how did this guy wind up here? And I've never noticed him until today. I'm not even kidding when I say that. But that just made me laugh. I was like, who the fuck is that guy? So anyway, tell me what happens next.
Well, immediately after the Goro fight, Shang Tsung is like dragging Sonya by the arm. He's got her by the hair, and he's like, all right, well, a deal's a deal. I challenge her to fight me in Outworld. And yeah, Raiden calling him a coward and everything, and Shang Tsung's like, nah, the rules are clear. Here's what's going to happen. So he disappears. And so Johnny Cage and Liu Kang have to go after Shang Tsung because Raiden can't go to Outworld for whatever reason. So he's like, don't worry about it. There's going to be somebody else to guide you. So they end up going, and very shortly into their trip into Outworld, Liu Kang figures out somebody's following him. He pulls Reptile from invisibility away from the wall that he's hiding on and throws him into a statue that then turns into Ninja Reptile with the green. And we know this because you hear the MK2 Reptile, like you've selected him as a character. And then they start going in. They start fighting. And yeah, that's the fight of the movie for a lot of people. There's a lot to describe in there. Lots of moves, lots of flips. Liu Kang, I think the actor broke his ribs when he got thrown onto a pillar at one point.
Yep.
Let's see. Again, I think we mentioned this before. That was kind of like a late added-on fight.
Yeah, the test audiences were like, there's not enough fighting. So they added this one and the Johnny Cage Scorpion. So,
with that knowledge, like, what was Reptile's original role in this movie? Just to be a spy and a little, like, CGI monster that runs around?
If we think about it, because I've never put this much thought into it. No one's ever posed this question. But the scenes where Reptile is a lizard, if those were gone, would we... I'm trying to think. Are those stitched into anything, or do they seem added in too? Did they add in all of that to book this fight? Because I know the first time we see him, it's like Johnny Cage and Liu Kang see Katana, and they talk about her, and then they walk away. They walk out of frame, and then Shang Tsung walks in, like right behind them, and says, like, keep an eye on her, Reptile. Did they just like, okay, fuck. Call Carrie. We need Shang Tsung to, like, talk about Reptile. What do you mean? It'll make sense later. And they, like, did they stitch in all of these? I'm not sure.
I don't get that sense, only because, like, that happens immediately after Katana and Liu Kang have, like, made their first kind of connection, and, like, Shang Tsung is very aware of it, and he's like, all right, we can't be having this. So, like, luckily Reptile's right here, and I could talk to him. But I'm trying to think, when Reptile shows up when they're running away from the that first scene with Goro and Kano and all them in there, and that's when Reptile spits on Liu Kang, and that's like really the only other time you see him up until now, I think.
I think you're right.
I don't know. Like, maybe they just didn't give him that big of a role, or maybe his original fight scene was just Liu Kang throwing him on the ground and he turns into bugs and he steps on him or whatever. Like, there's none of the ninja fighting.
Which
I don't know.
That I have questions about. In my notes I have, like, the statue, question mark, bugs, question mark. I don't know. But right above that in my notes, I have, you mentioned, we know it's Reptile, because when Liu Kang throws the lizard into the statue and it becomes the green ninja, we hear the MK2 announcer go, Reptile. That, I just gotta throw this out there, it's the best part of the movie. That shit is so cool. I'm not disparaging any of the rest of the movie, but hearing the announcer introduce Reptile and the eyes light up red and he springs to life, I will never not pop for that big time. I don't know what it is. It's just awesome.
Especially because it immediately transitions into that music.
Yeah, dude.
The Control, was it Juno, like, Control remix or whatever it is on the CD. But yeah, real good.
Dude, when this is over, I'm gonna listen to that song.
See, perfect.
Because it's so good. I wish I could put it in here now, but we get copyrighted to death. So
that is, I replicated that for my stop motion. So when you see Reptile, if you get to Reptile, if you play well, that's like the music that I replicated to put in there, because that's like, at this point, that's like his theme song. And by the way, going back to awesome theme songs, Goro's theme song when he fights with Art, so good.
I agree. On the topic of your stop motion, which maybe you'll see Reptile, maybe you won't. Is this the Mortal Kombat Choose Your Destiny stop motion that is viewable at youtube.com/Captain McKay Random?
That's the one and the same, yeah. Oh. Very much that video.
So this is the one where a fight will play out, and then there will be prompts on screen, and the viewer gets to choose what they want to see. There are branching paths with different settings, including the pit, and including the Nether Realm. This is that one, right?
That's the one, yeah. And let's not forget, there is also Goro's lair. So should you decide you want to fight Prince Goro, if you want the honor or privilege or whatever Shang Tsung says, that's a possibility for you. And you know what? Sometimes you might beat him, and other times he might get you. So
interesting. And this is the stop motion animation that comes complete with dozens of finishes and fatalities, correct?
Oh yes, lots of Easter eggs for the eagle-eyed Mortal Kombat fan who may just also enjoy stop motion animation.
And for the people out there who heard that link, but I said it too fast and they couldn't click on it, I'm pretty sure the link directly to this video is in the description, is it not?
Let me check underneath. Yeah, I see it there.
Oh, okay. Well, now that we have that settled. And here's the thing. Not if, but when you click on that link and you watch it, you have to leave a comment and say that you came from this video. And if you don't, you know the deal. You gotta unsubscribe, you gotta lose my number. Those are the rules. So Liu Kang, Reptile's going down here. You said this is a lot of people's favorite fight. It's my favorite fight. I think the music plays a big part of it. I love just the super creative spots. I don't know what this thing's purpose was in the world, but there's like this spinning piece of wood with spikes on it. And like Reptile kicks Liu Kang, who grabs onto this thing. The spikes spin at Reptile. He ducks under them, and when he stands up, Liu Kang comes around and like double drop kicks him in the chest.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really thought about what that thing is. What is
it
that?
Serves the purpose like in Outworld somehow.
Maybe it's some sort of execution device, but
probably.
Dude, the fucking spots in this fight. Liu Kang hits the bicycle kick in this fight. Reptile actually gets a Frankensteiner from Liu Kang in this fight. And there's just a part that I love, where it might be right after the Frankensteiner. Reptile is face down on the ground, and there's like all the sand and dirt on the ground. And he like is trying to catch his breath, and he's like, and like when he breathes, this big puff of dirt kicks up in front of his face. Just the little details, man. I love that.
Yeah, that was cool.
Going towards the end, Liu Kang hits the bicycle kick. Reptile falls back into the statue. And it breaks and it turns into bugs. And Liu Kang stomps on it with the most amazing noise possible. I'm not even going to try to recreate here, but he just like growls for like 5 whole seconds. Okay, what do you think? You need to explain the booking here. Mm-hmm. What the fuck is with the statue and the bugs?
I don't fully understand it.
I don't understand it at all.
Yeah, because we've gone from a literal like reptile creature who Shang Tsung calls Reptile earlier in the movie. We then get confirmation that his name is indeed Reptile from the in-game like audio clip that shows up when he starts fighting. And then when he like decomposes, he's just bugs. So I can't make sense of that. I do have on my notes like when Liu Kang is finished with his bicycle kick, I have sweet reverse footage of flip through wall.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, oh yeah, you can tell that he obviously like did an awesome flip into that environment, and they just rewound it and like then played it in reverse. But yeah, that's my understanding of the bug thing. I don't know.
I have. You know what? I don't understand the lizard into the statue thing or the bugs, but we did see when they first got to Outworld, we see one of those statues, and inside the rib cage of the statue is like a rotted corpse. And it looks like it died whoever that was died in a great deal of fear. So I don't know if those statues like prey on people, and it's kind of like the living forest where like they'll eat you up. I'm not really sure. So I don't know. In this universe, did Reptile have a human form, or did he just find that shit out when he got thrown into that statue?
He seems like he knows what he's doing as a human, so I figure he's probably had a human form at least once. He's like, I better learn some moves in case I get knocked into a statue.
He does seem like he knows what he's doing, but another thing that I noticed was even though Sub-Zero and Scorpion and Reptile, they all look the same, the palette swap ninjas as they're called, same outfit, just different colors.
Yeah.
Sub-Zero was very defensive. Like, he didn't really do anything to Liu Kang. A lot of his shit, like you said, was he'd run up a wall and backflip away from Liu Kang. Liu Kang tried to like throw him down the ramp, and Sub-Zero did the gymnastics to get away. Yeah. And then his move that he was doing was from far away. Cut to Scorpion, extremely aggressive. Like, closing the distance, kick to the leg, kick to the kidney, kick to the head, elbow to the spine. Like, he stayed on you like white on rice. Mm-hmm. Now cut to Reptile. There was a specific part where, like, Liu Kang is up a set of stairs. Reptile runs and leaps, and it doesn't even look like he knows what he wanted to do. Like, his limbs are flailing in the air. And when he lands, then he starts throwing all these strikes, but maybe it's just them, like, super close attention to detail, but I felt like the actor, he was, like, moving like an animal. Like, he didn't know what was going on most of the time. Like, his moves are weird. Like, he bends in weird ways. Maybe I'm just dissecting it strangely, but to me, all three ninjas totally felt like they had their own personality, which I liked a lot.
Yeah, you get the sense of that from his, like, fighting stance, too. He's almost in, like, a mantis, like, flat hand, like, totally different from Scorpion, totally different from Sub-Zero. Like, he's very distinguished.
And where Scorpion would speak, Reptile's noises are all, like, weird, like, squeaks and shit. Like, he at no point does he try to say, like, over here or anything. Yeah. Like, he'll rush at you and you hear, like, slithering and, like a weird squeak. I don't know what the fuck animal makes that noise, but he does, apparently.
Well, I hear when you get a bunch of bugs and put them in a statue, they make that noise.
You know what? You might be onto something. What do we need for that noise? Can I get 9 Madagascar hissing cockroaches and an 8-inch millipede from Madagascar? So Liu Kang goes over Reptile. Mm-hmm. Where do we go next? For the Dan-Eds who are like, good God, they've gone twice as long as the movie is. We're almost done.
You knew why you clicked this video.
You know what you're getting into when Captain McKay and I talk about movies.
Yep, at this point. So I think now, after the fight, Kitana's guiding them and basically says that Shang Tsung has Sonya captive in her, in Shao Kahn's fortress, basically. And we know from earlier dialogue with Raiden that Sonya doesn't actually need to accept Shang Tsung's challenge. She can basically stall him out until they get there to save her. So we get another, like, CG, like, upward shot of the tower that he's holding her in with, again, you know, some pretty not great green screen where, you know, you zoom in the window and there she is up against the staircase. But the image of Sonya captive is very reminiscent of the stage in MK2 where she's on display in, like, Shao Kahn's arena with Kano.
Nailed it.
So, yeah, that was cool. Shang Tsung's basically commenting, like, hey, look, you know, if you don't accept my challenge, you guys lose, and Outworld wins, and everything is going to just go to shit. But all the monks show up. Turns out 3 of them are Johnny Cage, Kitana, and Liu Kang, who have now come to rescue Sonya and challenge Shang Tsung, which eventually Liu Kang does, and that's where that fight starts.
I'm going to throw out for the record that Sonya in this brown leather dress with the teased up 90s hair strikes a certain chord, let me tell you.
Johnny Cage agrees. They made it a point to show that scene where, like, in the middle of this fight, he's kind of just, like, distracted looking at her. He's like, nice dress.
Yeah, Liu Kang is fighting Shang Tsung. And he goes, nice dress. And she's like, ugh. Oh, that's so good. I want to point out again here. It's a thing that drives me nuts in a lot of movies these days. And when I say these days, the specific examples I have are Batman v Superman and Mortal Kombat 2021, where there are problems that could be solved if people would just take the time to think, but they don't. Everything is boom, 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 fight, 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 you're going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So many things in this movie from 1995 come down to game plans, strategies, and thinking about it before you leap. Where Johnny Cage had to come up with a plan to beat Goro. If Liu Kang, what's the word I'm looking for here? If he didn't know from Raiden and Katana, like the challenges he was going to face, because Katana's like, he's going to make you face yourself. He's going to face like a crazy challenge and you have to face your fear. If he didn't know that, he would have fallen for all those tricks. So on and so forth. Once again, it's another scenario where the good guys were smart and they figured this out. It wasn't just brute strength and they weren't just the best. They had to work together to figure it out. And to me, storytelling-wise, that goes a long way, and I buy that way more than the boom, boom, boom approach. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a kind of a focal point of everything Raiden is trying to tell him about through this whole movie, too. He's like, look, you guys got a lot to learn.
Yeah.
You guys got to know certain things about yourselves and about your adversaries before you can have any hope of winning. And so, like, that, yeah, it's in keeping with the whole kind of central focus of the whole direction this movie goes.
I liked how Sonya, and once again, her using her head, she stalls him out, like you said. And when the good guys reveal that they're there, Shang Tsung is like, okay, then I challenge Johnny Cage. Like, he's doing everything he can because he knows, fuck, okay, Raiden got in Liu Kang's ear, this is bad.
Yeah.
I know where he comes from. That bloodline is the great Kung Lao's bloodline. Son of a bitch. Tell me about the three stages of this fight.
Well, first they have a little bit of back and forth where we finally get a little bit of blood in our Mortal Kombat movie, unless you count Scorpion's lava. But Shang Tsung is actually like, he gets a busted lip or something, which you would think in a Mortal Kombat movie would be like a lot of blood, but this is pretty much it, I think, right? Yeah,
it's very very subdued. Just it's the tiniest amount of color you can get.
I had a moment where I just I thought of Dodgeball, where Ben Stiller's like, nobody makes me bleed my own blood. And so then Shang Tsung just starts resurrecting like old warriors, basically. Like, he brings these other guys into the fight, and Liu Kang has to beat them. And then after that, I believe Liu Kang then has to fight. Well, not fight, but he is presented with the soul of his younger brother, and he's like, now it's the head games and the mind games and everything. What I also included was that a part of Shang Tsung's plan must have been to get Liu Kang winded, because he makes him run up those stairs.
He does.
I'm like, his cardio better be real good, or else he's going to suffer when he gets up here.
You mentioned that the second stage is Shang Tsung brings up like those warriors from the ages. That part to me is so cool, because there's one like kind of Viking looking dude who kind of looks like Jason Momoa's character from Game of Thrones. He's got like the furry like gear on his legs and this battle axe. There's also like a classic samurai, and then there's this big bald dude with like these pointy weird hand knife weapons. I love thinking about who those guys were, and that those guys were probably the best from that era, but they still couldn't stand up to Shang Tsung. And now he has the souls of all of these dudes from all of these different ages. That's just cool, man. I don't give a shit who you are. That's cool.
Yeah. I didn't think too deeply about that, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, these guys were the ones that fought Shang Tsung and lost.
The Chan thing, when he morphs into Liu Kang's brother, and like you said, he tries to use the head games. This part, like, I know a lot of people probably look at Mortal Kombat as like, oh, it's a video game movie. It might be the best video game movie, but
yeah,
fuck that. I love this movie. I really enjoy it, and this part is pretty, like, emotional. You're not gonna cry about it, but you're watching this guy come face to face with the brother that he blames himself for his brother's death. And, like, it's believable to the point that you're like, well, he knows that that's Shang Tsung. Why doesn't he just punch him? He's so shocked by what he's seeing. You know, like, I tried to put myself in those shoes, and I was like, what if I was fighting Shang Tsung and then he turned into my dad? Like, my first thought would not be, all right, Dad's eating an overhand right. I would be looking at it like, okay, hold on. What is going on here? But I'm not as skilled as Liu Kang, so I'd probably just get cut in half, and then Shang Tsung would be like, you're an idiot.
Taking your soul.
But it's like, people can say this is just a video game movie or whatever, but I'm going to go out and say, like, I think the writing here is really impressive. The callbacks and the different, like, the comedy and the emotional parts that they lean on. I genuinely just think this is a really good movie.
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching it again yesterday, I could find very little fault with it in terms of its, like, progression and its plot and stuff. I mean, some of the effects, you just have to concede that they're 90s effects and they're only going to get so good. But, yeah, I mean, like I said before, probably at the start of this, like, there's not a ton of stuff you could pull from the first Mortal Kombat game, which this is basically entirely based on. Mm-hmm. Like, they did what they could, and it all worked.
I agree that it worked. What did not work for me when I was a kid was there's a part where after Liu Kang sees through the Chan thing and Shang Tsung, he morphs back and he's like, you're mine, and he goes to hit him, but Liu Kang saw it coming, so now he's getting the best of Shang Tsung, and Liu Kang basically is blocking all of Shang Tsung's shit and dropping him, and Liu Kang says something to the effect of, like, it's over, sorcerer, like, concede defeat or whatever, and or he, like, I pity you. And Shang Tsung says to him, save your pity for the weak, meaning, like, those who are not strong enough to stand up to a challenge. Save your pity for them. But again, I saw this when I was very young.
Oh, okay.
And I thought weak, he meant W-E-E-K. Like, it's only Sunday, pal. You got 6 other days to worry about. It's so, like, it's funny to think of how I took in a lot of these lines back then compared to now. It's like, my dad introduced me to the movie Blazing Saddles and other, like, Mel Brooks movies when I was really young. Okay. And there were jokes I just did not understand at that age. Mm-hmm. And not even just jokes, but lines like this I took totally the wrong way as a kid. And I had to call that out because I think that's just so stupid. But guide me through this finish here.
Well, Liu Kang eventually starts getting the best of him, starts punching him, and Shang Tsung is obviously losing power because souls start, like, escaping little by little after every hit. You see, like, a soul leaving him.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, that was really cool. And finally, also, prior to this, when Liu Kang ran up the stairs, you see, like, the floor beneath them, spikes start coming up through it, reminiscent of, like, how the bottom of the pit is. So we got kind of a cool little, like, reference to the pit, a little nod. It's not the pit, but you know what? At least they fucking used it in this one. Yeah, so Liu Kang eventually catches him with a fireball, knocks Shang Tsung off of the platform and down into the pit below, where he instantly decomposes, and all the souls that presumably have been keeping him rejuvenated all this time, they just escape. There's, like, a big, like, beam of light, basically. I guess it's a soulnado, come to find out in the MK lore. Yeah. And that's when Liu Kang is face to face with his brother's true soul, who basically is just like, you know, we're all is forgiven, everything is fine, and until we meet again, kind of thing. And Liu Kang has finally found that peace within himself, and defeated Shang Tsung, and Mortal Kombat is won by Earthrealm. Also, there was a guy with like a bowling shirt in that Soulnado, which I saw, and I was like, "What? Who was that guy?"
Then you know what? Maybe that's the brother of Sleeveless Flannel guy from the Goro fight.
Then maybe, yeah.
That's what that guy was doing there. Anybody see my brother? He's wearing a bowling shirt.
Shang Tsung already get him.
Here's the thing: you and I, we've already got a team working on the Art Lean Master Boyd Shaolin Monks game.
Yeah, right.
We're going to work on the side project, which stars Sleeveless Flannel and Bowling Shirt Brothers.
That's going to be like the Fire and Ice expansion of this game.
Exactly. When you mentioned the Soulnado and everybody, all the souls are fleeing, I never, just like there was something earlier, I think it was Flannel Shirt Guy actually, that I said I never noticed until this very viewing. But if you look closely in the Soulnado, don't focus on Chan, don't look at Liu Kang, look in the background. The warriors from the ages, like the samurai and like whoever that Mongolian-looking guy was with the cool mustache, they all come out of the Soulnado, and they have like their arms up, and they're looking at the sky. So that like bloodthirsty combat look that they had earlier is gone, and now that they're free and no longer under control, they look like they're finally relieved. And there's just still, being realistic, I have probably seen this movie like 40 times in my life, which is a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And I just noticed that for the first time because I made a point to like look at the background for certain things. And unlike Mortal Kombat Annihilation, where if you look at the background, you'll see like scaffolding and like lights and shit that you're not supposed to see. And
the edges of CG, like composite lines where they just overlap and they're terrible. Yeah.
Scorpion just waiting in the background because nobody told the actor to get offset.
Yeah.
In this one, you'll see like little cool story callbacks, which I think is very awesome. But yeah, they make peace. Chan goes into the light and he says, "We'll be reunited again someday." So then we see our good guys, Sonya, Johnny Cage, who seem a little chummy at this point. They seem like maybe they've spent a little time together and they've gotten to know each other a little bit. Maybe on the boat over from Hong Kong. Or maybe they, you know what? They definitely didn't use one of Raiden's portals because that would have been instant. There'd be no relationship building.
Right.
And the balls in the center of the earth are only a little faster than that. So even though Johnny Cage knew about it, there's no way he told him yet.
Also, he wouldn't have given up the opportunity to, like, he's like, well, I got a couple hours on a boat with Sonya, or maybe she gets in a ball with someone else and it takes 5 seconds.
Exactly.
I got to plan my moves.
That's a good point. We see them all. Liu Kang, Katana, Johnny Cage, Sonya Blade, Raiden. They're celebrating. They're walking down the path of the Temple of Light that we saw in the beginning, and there are monk children carrying their colorful flags, and they're running all over the place. They are celebrating. People in Chicago and New York and all this, they probably still don't know shit. Because, like, Liu Kang, they didn't believe in all this. But these monk children were like, okay, they won. Nobody but us knows that now the fate of the world is settled. And it's thanks to us. But they're walking down the thing and celebrating, and then the tower in the Temple of Light explodes, and a giant, like, I don't know, like ethereal version of Shao Kahn appears out of the top of it with this like dark side cartoony voice.
Yeah.
And he's like, bow to me, or whatever. And we get Raiden going, I don't think so. Cue fight stances, cue Mortal Kombat theme. Roll them goddamn credits, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Hit me. Let's do a couple minutes of wrap up here and just talk about the whole package. Give me your roundabout thoughts now.
This is one of those where every time I watch it, I always enjoy it. I don't revisit this one as much as, say, Annihilation, because Annihilation, there's just so much to laugh at and pick apart, and it's one of those like hilariously bad movies where this one does not fall into that category. I don't think this is even remotely bad. No. I quite enjoy this movie. like I said kind of before, like there's so much established lore that comes from this movie that has found its way into main Mortal Kombat canon.
Yeah.
Even to this day, like Kano being Australian and Johnny and Sonya having like that relationship that they establish, and even like lesser nods to the movie, like Shang Tsung constantly like recurring Kerry Tagawa, like constantly coming back to play that part in different things, is great, because I mean there's so many establishing characteristics of Shang Tsung that are so linked with him and his charisma in this movie.
I'm with you. 100% I'm with you. Like I said just a minute ago, I have seen this movie dozens of times. When we talked about doing this review, because we like put on the books that like we're definitely going to do it. It's no longer just an idea. It's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I was excited just at the thought that, okay, I have an excuse to sit down and watch this movie again. And not even just like put it on while I clean up the house or anything. I was like, I'm going to put it on. I have my actual book here where I take my notes. I grab a Sharpie because I write in a big fat Sharpie for some reason. My handwriting's dog shit, don't worry about it. But I was like, I'm going to pay as close attention as possible. Let's just watch this movie again. I will never not be excited to watch this movie. And for me, it's not even I'm a Mortal Kombat mark and that's why I like it. This movie is a big reason why I became a Mortal Kombat mark. Like, I remember being a kid and seeing this movie and just being so enraptured by the fights and all the different characters. And I was too young to know what I wanted to do, but I thought Sonya and Katana were very pretty. So I was like, I like the girls in the movie as well. But, yeah, I just, not even just as a, like, oh, it's one of the good video game movies. This movie, I just enjoy it. And watching it again this is probably the first time I've seen it since I did the History of Mortal Kombat Part 6, and that's a couple years old now. So sitting down and watching it again, I had a blast. And I just have only good memories from this one. I didn't get to see it in theaters. I was a little too young for that, but only good memories for this one. And still talking about it, still making videos about it, hanging out with one of my buddies for damn near 3 hours at this point, talking about it 25 years later, still making good memories with this movie. So, hats off to this one.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it when you said, like, a part of the reason why you're such a fan is because of this movie and seeing it. And I think that was my story, too. Like, I was familiar with the games, but I never really played them. But when I saw the movie, that got me more into the characters and the world and everything that the games had. And, like, around this same time, like, MK3 was just starting to hit or coming very shortly after. And so, like, by the next year, I had, like, MK2 on Sega, and my friend had MK3, and we were, like, playing, and it was, like, we were, like, totally engrossed in it at this point. And I think the movie probably helped. It certainly, if it didn't kickstart it, it definitely pushed us in the right direction to just be fans of it. So, yeah, a lot of it comes back to this movie.
Agreed. I think now we have officially covered everything. Do you have any parting words for the Dan-Dans on this episode of Mortal Kombat Monday?
Just wait until we take 4 hours of Annihilation.
Dude, how long do you think we're going to go on that one?
I mean, I have so much to say about that movie. It's always so fun to watch it. But, man, yeah, like, that's up in the air. That's anybody's guess.
I'm thinking we don't make them wait forever. How about within the next month or two, we get that one on the books and record it?
I can make that happen. Annihilation is out there on the DVD shelf. Easy, ready for me to get to it.
I love it. Dan-Dans, remember, you're going to youtube.com/Captain McKay Random. You're clicking that subscribe button. You're watching some of his amazing work. And, we want to say thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, whatever you did. I hope you just listened, because I think it's just going to be like still images on the screen, because we didn't record video for this. But we love you, and we'll see you next week.